In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
Well, howdy doody.
Howdy doody, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Rick Walker.
Well, thank you, and I'd wish you a happy I'll wish you a happy
It's a little
Canadian
early.
Thanksgiving, but you can be an honorary Canuckistanian if you want to be.
Cool.
Today.
I've always wanted to be an honorary Canuckistan. Is that what you call yourselves? Canucks?
Yeah,
Canuckis?
Yeah, Canucks.
Canuckistanis?
Yeah, Canucks.
Canuckistanis.
Well, that's when you want to, we're Canucks, like the Vancouver Canucks.
That's what I always called you. Canucks.
The Canucks, yeah.
Anyway.
Canadians.
Welcome to Strange Bedfellows, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving to our Canadian cousins up across the border. We're glad you're here, and thanks for spending your Saturday night with us. Sorry we're a little bit late. We were having some connection issues tonight with our guest, but I think he's going to be with us very, very shortly, and I'm very happy to have this guy with us. We've been trying to get him for quite a while. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show Tyler Nixon, longtime personal attorney for Roger Stone and a frequent guest on the Stone Zone. If you watch the Stone Zone podcast, he's also a well-known radio talk show host out of Denver, beautiful Denver, Colorado. Tell you a little bit about him. He's former Army Infantry vet, conservative, constitutionalist, advocate, writer, technologist, critical thinker, critical historian, and a self-described extremist in the defense of liberty, to quote Barry Goldwater. And speaking of water, my eye just started watering like crazy. I can't even see the screen. I hate it when that happens. I think he's trying to get connected, Rick. So while we're waiting for Tyler, did you have World War III on your apocalypse bingo card for today?
No, but I was thinking maybe I should dial 911 and get the eye doctor for you.
I mean, what? We had our first cold front blow through here today.
Yeah.
And the allergies that came with it, oh my goodness. We went from 95 degrees yesterday, and I had the AC blasting, to 41 degrees.
Wow.
So
Yeah, it's cold
now
here
I got
too.
the heat on, and woo, it's like I'm having some trouble adjusting my poor eyes.
Well, the
Maybe.
good news is we haven't been nuked yet, but my
trying.
God, from what we've seen over the past number of hours in Israel, I'm very worried.
Me too. That's why I'm crying.
Yeah.
I'm verklempt. I'm overwhelmed with emotion.
Yeah. The number of rockets, missiles, the number of people dead, the horrific nature of the attacks, the assault on, the number of civilians caught up in this is terrible. I don't care about the politics. I do care about the lives. I mean, when on that level, it's like, just, can we please just stop the killing?
Right.
My God.
But of course, everyone has that emotional first reaction when you see these shocking videos on social media. I'm sure we've probably all seen them by now. We aren't going to show them to you here because they're just too much. And honestly, I wish you didn't have to look at them. But everyone's first response is we've got to fire back, and then it escalates and it escalates and it escalates.
Well, yeah, and then there's, and it's just been going on for far too long. So this is not this is not new. It's just an extension of everything that has come before, because the fighting has just gone on too long over there. It's just gone on too long everywhere. Human beings, we suck.
Yeah, we do. And here we are, kind of, at least it seems to me, fueling both sides of this conflict.
Isn't that bizarre how that happens?
Right. Whose
Right?
side are we on?
Yeah, $6
What are
billion
we
back
doing?
to Iran. You have these weapons that were left in Afghanistan. Al Qaeda picks those up. Oh, I thought we were supposed to be fighting Al Qaeda. No, I don't know. Are they or not? Who are they? Friends, foe? I don't know.
Al
And then,
Qaeda? We
yeah,
created them.
yeah. I mean, for crying out loud. And then we stand with Israel, but we're also arming the Palestinians. It's like,
Right.
oh my God, it is insane. You can't make sense of it.
This particular conflict, of course, there are innocent civilians, but we can really, in my opinion, it's hard to say that either side is entirely justified, entirely right, or entirely innocent. I honestly don't take either side in the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
Me
I see
either.
both points of view, but I also see that my entire lifetime, Rick, as long as I can remember, my first memories as a child are of the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Now this is happening 50 years later, and my whole life I've done nothing but watch these two factions murder each other
Yeah.
and go to,
Yeah.
conflict, constant conflict. And I don't see our government really helping.
No, and because of the nature of the history, the politics, this connects to so much worldwide, which is why it's so volatile. Why, with the war in Ukraine and this now, and this constant struggle on the economic side and BRICS and what's going on with world currency, everything. It's just we're that close to a full-blown third world war. We're already in the third world war, but this thing's going kinetic.
I'm afraid it could, and it could turn nuclear at any moment. Actually, Rick, while we're waiting on Tyler, let's see if we can find an update, because tonight I'm pretty sure that you can anticipate some shock and awe as a response.
Yeah, well, when I was on our regular program, just before coming on here, oh my God,
I'm
what
afraid
is
of that.
this? No, okay, it was posted 50 minutes ago, but no, it's not current. And how about this? Hamas is claiming Ukraine sold them the weapons they used in the attack today against Israel.
I'm not surprised. I saw that coming, didn't you? When all those weapons ended up on the dark web.
Oh yeah.
And we heard that ISIS was getting them. It doesn't surprise me that Hamas would too. Holy cow.
أشكر السلطات الأوكرانية لبيعنا هذا السلاح، إن هذا السلاح سوف نستخدمه ضدكم يا أعداء، سوف نستخدمه ضد إسرائيل. نشكر السلطات الأوكرانية لبيعنا هذا السلاح.
For crying out loud. I laugh. I just laugh when Justin
Laugh?
Trudeau up here talks about gun control, and then he sends all these guns to Ukraine and weapons and money, and I'm like, you're so full of crap.
Well,
Gun
that's
control.
my
We can't
question.
have guns. Oh, but we'll send them all over there. They've given away our military to Ukraine.
Well, there's nothing left to give to Israel, is there?
No,
I mean,
we have nothing.
that was my first question today. Of course, I heard Joe Biden stating that we're with Israel all the way. And I thought, great. Does that mean we have to send them $200 billion now, too?
We don't have any money left here either in Canada, so we don't have anything left for the military. They just gave $650 million more to Zelensky when he came to Canada, and then was it last week they cut $1 billion from the Canadian defense budget. Well, gee, why would they do that? Well, they can't. They don't have any money. They can't afford. Well, where did it go? Ukraine, of course.
Of course.
So now we have no military, basically, right? They can't fund it.
So there'd be nothing left for your national defense. How are you supposed to send aid to Israel too? I mean,
It's a
I
joke,
presume
man.
you're
It's a
going
joke.
to be.
We're practically defenseless. Our military here in Canada was they don't have enough soldiers. They can barely put it together anymore. It's been
True.
neglected, right? We just don't have much. And then they send all this money to Ukraine, 9.5, closer to 0.6 billion, and now they have to cut $1 billion from the budget for us, like just for domestic security, right? To just keep our soldiers properly equipped and fed. $1 billion coming out.
That's
And if
just
if these conflicts continue on, like you don't have any money now, what are you going to do now? You blew it all up in Ukraine.
right.
Now we've got another front opening up. Good. What are you going to do now? Print more money. Oh, inflate the crap out of the economy. People can't make ends meet here now. The cost of housing in Canada has doubled under Trudeau. Doubled. More than doubled in some cases. People are struggling to buy turkey this Thanksgiving, and I'm not joking. People
No, you're not.
are here in Canada. People are kind of just getting by, but I'm seeing homelessness here like I've never seen it before,
Really?
ever.
Really?
I live in a small city. When I moved
Yeah.
here, there was no homelessness that was visible at all. Now there's a tent city.
In your little town?
Oh yeah, like I don't know if they're there
Wow.
right now. It's starting to get a little colder, but they've been living down by the Thames River. I did a video for a local. I did some videos for it's like a support organization, a charity thing. It's a charity where they intervene and they help homeless people. I recently did an update a couple months ago. Yeah, and it's a growing problem. The drug abuse, the poverty, people with nothing, living on the streets in this small city. What they're doing here is they're sort of exporting them from Toronto and to go into smaller towns like this. They'll put them on a bus with a bag of whatever. Here's your bag of crap, and away you go. So in my hometown, just about an hour from here, London, Ontario, it's a city of about 500,000, right? It's not huge, sort of a smaller city again. But you would hardly ever see homelessness when I was growing up, and even 15 years ago. Like I used to own a retail shop downtown, and we had problems down there because they would put the men's mission and the homeless shelters and stuff around there, right? But there wasn't very much of it. Not like now. Now you go down to the suburbs, right by the big shopping mall, right near the highway. And there's a McDonald's there. I stopped in there with my son a couple of weeks ago. There was a lineup of about 10 homeless people with shopping carts, like shopping cart people, in the parking lot of the McDonald's. There are homeless people on my street, and I live in like a small suburb here. I go out and walk my dog some nights, and they come from like there's a hotel that they've converted into sort of a halfway house thing here.
Right. Right.
And so they use that now, and so sometimes they kind of wander up here right to my home, and I'm like in the middle of like
To your door?
like well, yeah, yeah, because they break into the cars and steal all the change. So I just leave my car open, so I
Right.
can just get it, right? So they don't damage anything.
Are
It's
these
okay.
native-born Canadians? Are they migrants from
No,
across
just
our
regular,
southern
just
border? Where are they? Who are
just
they?
it'd be someone who looks like me, but probably with a drug problem, so they're all emaciated and they're, laying on the ground. But we have things called super boxes here, which are mailboxes, so that instead of like delivering the mail right to your door now, you walk like a block that way, and they've got super boxes for all the houses in the neighborhood. So they kind of hang out over there sometimes. It's not a really bad problem, and they're very, very friendly for the most part. So, I go over and talk to them. Most people are afraid to, but I'm like, hey, how you doing? How's it going tonight? You want to see my dog?
So they're not as aggressive as the ones we have here in the States. Some of the ones in the States are so drugged up, they just as soon slit your throat just to say hello to you.
I don't know. I have a thing with homeless people, though. Like I attract them. I do. They're like, it's true. I don't know. I guess I look friendly, maybe. So I talk to them, and
I think you told me once your wife called you a bum magnet.
yeah, that's right. First time we went out on a date.
Really?
Yeah. I pulled up. We was taking her out to dinner. I had my 1975 Firebird. I was being Mr.
Ooh,
Cool.
sweet. Nice.
I pull up.
Impressive.
And we're outside this restaurant, and this guy comes over, and he's like drunk and stoned, and I don't know what, and then and he's like, and he comes, and he leans right in the window, right in her face. He's spare some change, right?
Oh.
And like that was like first date, and it's been like that ever since, everywhere I go. But it's okay.
That's incredible.
It's all right. What can I say?
Well, no money for the homeless, but we've got plenty of money for defense in Israel, right? I do have a little bit of an update, just came in a few moments ago that, as expected, the Israeli army, the armed forces are gearing up for a night of shock and awe. They are now, there's video that's just emerged showing them heading to the border with Lebanon, that northern border. And they're doing this, of course, in preparation for any possible aggression by Hezbollah, preparing for a possible attack against Hezbollah or the Palestinian militants in Lebanon. Now, of course, that troubles me because any kind of escalation on that Lebanese-Israeli border, we have to take that very seriously. That would be a major escalation. And there is video of the Israeli military convoy, which was spotted, including multiple self-propelled howitzers, support vehicles, tanks, you name it, they got it. And they are getting ready to roll. It looks like all systems go. And of course, now we know that Iran is apparently involved in this as well. And Netanyahu says that Israel will cut off all supplies to Gaza.
So
Israel has cut off electricity.
Yeah. So war game
They've
this
cut
out
off
for
electricity,
me.
fuel, everything.
War game.
Sorry,
this
did
out
you say
for me.
something, Rick?
Yeah, war game this thing out for me because, I see the United States, NATO supporting Israel. If this escalates, then on the other side, you probably have Russia supporting Palestine. You have Iran opposing the United States. You basically have the BRICS nations, I think, lining up against Israel, and you have the West lining up with Israel. Kinda. But it's complicated. So there's going to be some gray area and bleed over, and who knows how everything's going to end up. Like, it might get a surprise, and one country that you think is going to align this way might end up aligning that way. I can't quite figure it out. And while all this is going on, you have the United States funding everybody. Right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
And then this terrorist group over here is, they're being supported by the Americans, but they're probably killing American troops. This is going to blow up. This blows up my mind. So I don't know how it plays out.
Me neither. The wild card in this scenario is Russia. Russia has put out a statement today saying that, they're calling for a ceasefire. They want hostilities to de-escalate. Same thing with Saudi Arabia. I think that every responsible nation should be calling for a ceasefire immediately.
I didn't hear that from
Hard
Biden
to tell
today.
that's not what we heard from Joe Biden.
No. We're going to stand with Israel no matter what.
Of course.
Till every last human on the earth is exterminated. We're standing with Israel. Nuke them all! He didn't say that, but
See, now here's
my God.
Here's the part I don't understand is how did Israel not see this coming? Why did the Iron Dome apparently fail? Mossad the chief of Mossad put out a statement about an hour ago saying that we didn't have an inkling of what was going on. He says, quote, "We had no warning of any kind. It was a total surprise that the war broke out this morning." He says, he told CNN, "This is beyond imagination from our point of view. We didn't know they had this quantity of missiles, and we certainly didn't expect that they would be as effective as they were today." And again, he repeats, we didn't have any inkling of what was going on. He says he suspects that these rockets were manufactured in the Gaza Strip after being, quote, smuggled in by sea, and that Hamas probably was able to perform training, sort of a trial run, without letting Israeli forces discover their plans. Now, Mossad, no matter what you think of Israel or the Mossad, there's no doubt that they're one of the best intelligence agencies on the planet. How the hell did they not see this coming? So
well, you know what was really interesting about that is that I think it was one of the U.S. officials referred to this today as Israel's 9/11. And cue the conspiracy theories. False flag attack? Did they just let it happen? Did they know it was coming and not do anything about it? To then,
I wonder.
What, to then get people upset enough to manufacture the consent for a full-blown war, which is what we're getting now. I mean, I would like to think that, that didn't happen. But I thought the reference to 9/11, that was not the thing that first came to my mind when I saw this attack. So then to use that, I mean, if it's close to anything, it would fit in with the, to me, it's more like a Pearl Harbor conspiracy theory equivalent, where it's like they let the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. It's more akin to that, if that's what's happened. If it's something where they allowed it to go down. But the 9/11 thing, if you're trying to fuel those conspiracy theories or telegraph to the public that this is what you've done without actually coming right out and saying it, that would be one way to do it, and they really do like to screw with people's minds, don't they? So,
yeah, they do.
As I say, cue it up. There you go. Cue the conspiracy theories.
Well, Netanyahu is not playing games. This is not a theory to him. This is a war. And you know what's interesting to me, Rick? We live in such interesting times. The United States has not formally declared war on anybody in a long, long time. We use our AUMF, which isn't exactly a declaration of war, to go after whoever we want without a formal declaration of war. To this day, Russia and Ukraine have not formally declared war on each other, even though they're obviously at war. So the first thing that I found interesting this morning, Rick, was within an hour of these attacks coming in, Netanyahu, he just formally declared war. In the past, he's called them operations. This time, it's war. It's full-on war. He's not mincing words. He's not playing games or hiding behind some non-declaration of war. It's a formal declaration of war on Hamas. And they could end up declaring war on Iran, on Lebanon, on who knows who else.
I can't help but feel like all this is choreographed in some way because of everything else going on around the world, and now this is just the next stage, the next chapter, right? It's just like, do this.
Well, it's World War III.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's World War III. Yeah. When you've got a war going on in Eastern Europe, and then all hell breaks loose in the Holy Land, and you've got a declaration of war on another country, by definition, the more declarations there are, the more countries become involved in conflict. It's technically World War III.
And
That's what it is.
this world war will be different because it's coming here, folks. If it turns into a world war, it'll be
I
fought
heard you
here
say
in
that
North
today.
America too. It will.
Gave me the chills.
Yep.
I heard you say that tonight.
I'm not joking. This is serious stuff.
Well, Netanyahu isn't joking either. He said a couple hours ago that the Security Ministerial Council agreed to destroy the military capabilities of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And there are more rockets as we speak coming in from Gaza towards Israel. So it's on.
Just look at the politics in Canada and the U.S. You have political divisions defined somewhat by these international incidents, right? It's even here in Canada now, the ruling parties, maybe the NDP might be a little different than the others, but no, I don't think so. They're all going to be supporting Israel. Right, but then you've got sort of like these smaller parties like the PPC, and not even just the PPC here in Canada, but you've got this whole, I would say, populist political movement here that's going to support the other side. I think, possibly, and so that's growing, and they're actually pro-Russian. The populists here in Canada. Now you look into the States, very much sort of the same thing. I think you have. The MAGA group, even the RFK Jr. populists, and they're going to be supporting Russia. They are supportive of Russia. They're anti-war in Ukraine, right? Whereas, you've got the Biden loyalists, the fashocrats, as one of our
the fashocrats. That's a good one.
Yeah,
I like that.
So they.
Very accurate.
They're on the Israel side. I can see clear lines of loyalty, political battle lines drawn on this world war.
And things just got more complicated. Speaking of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's under attack, of course, because as you know, he's declared his unconditional support for Israel. And that pissed off a lot of people on the anti-war left, on the anti-imperialist left, and even in the center right. The Libertarian Party supports Palestine. So today, Kennedy put out a statement on Twitter. And I'm just going to read it to you because it set off quite a firestorm of controversy. Once again, okay, we're stirring this whole thing up again. It's been 2 months since his controversial statements. It was just starting to die down, and a lot of these people who were mad at him about his statements on Israel, they started to come around and they put it in proper perspective and said, well, I don't like his position on Israel, but his other positions are so good, I'm probably still going to support him even if I don't agree with him on that one issue. And then the whole thing reared its ugly head again because he put out this statement. He says, this ignominious, unprovoked, and barbaric attack on Israel must be met with world condemnation and unequivocal support for the Jewish state's right to self-defense. We must provide Israel with whatever it needs to defend itself now. As president, I'll make sure that our policy is unambiguous so that the enemies of Israel will think long and hard before attempting aggression of any kind. I applaud the strong statements of support from the Biden White House for Israel in her hour of need. However, the scale of these attacks means it is likely that Israel will need to wage a sustained military campaign to protect its citizens. Statements of support are fine, but we must follow through with unwavering, resolute, and practical action. America must stand by our ally throughout this operation and beyond as it exercises its sovereign right to self-defense. Now, that is a very hawkish statement there from Mr. Kennedy. And unfortunately, some friends of mine are tearing him up on Twitter. Kim Iverson, who's been a pretty big supporter of Kennedy all along, she wrote, and there goes my Kennedy vote out the window.
Well, then I guess she can vote for Biden.
The words of a warmonger. She called him a warmonger, dude. And Scott Ritter, right? Our friend Scott Ritter, his response. Did you see that?
I think he put something in my chat tonight. Actually.
Scotty did?
I believe so, yeah. And it was, I think it was from the chat. Maybe it was from Twitter or something, but it came through my email. I get some of those comments from the chat.
Interesting.
But anyway.
Well, I don't know if you saw his response to Kennedy.
You go ahead and
he said,
tell us, yeah.
I'll read you what he tweeted in response to Kennedy. He said, I like RFK Jr. I think he's the best choice for POTUS. He's positioned himself as the peace candidate. And this is the tweet I fear may have sunk his chances. Israel's policies regarding Palestine are indefensible. Bobby should be promoting an equitable peace settlement, not war. And then my friend George Galloway chimed in, responding to Scott Ritter, saying, it's embarrassing, truly. A lot of people on the anti-war left and the anti-war right did not like that tweet at all. They do not like Bobby's position on this one at all. And even I have to say, and you know, Bobby's a friend of mine and someone I love dearly and agree with on most things, but you know, I have to say that sounded like a very hawkish statement. I wouldn't go so far as to say warmongering. I think Kim Iverson might be going a bit too far by calling him a warmonger. Bobby's been anti-war his entire life, but you know, he makes it very clear that if he were the president at this moment, he would be taking an even more hardline stand than President Biden.
Let me be blunt. If you take a position like Iverson has taken, or even Scott Ritter, that's just a pro-Palestinian position, which says to me when I'm looking at that they would like to see Palestine get what it wants. Right. That's basically it. So that's why they're taking that position. They're pro-Palestinian. On the other side, if you want Israel to remain a sovereign nation state, a homeland, if you want to preserve it, you're going to have to defend it because the other side wants to wipe it off the face of the planet. So what are you going to do? You know, it was created and a lot of people didn't like it, but it's there. So either you preserve it, and if you do that, you're going to have to defend it because the other side is coming with everything they've got right now. And this is the start of the beginning of the end in their eyes. They'll nuke it if they get half a chance. And if some people are like, okay, that's good. Let's get rid of it. And then we'll take it all back. They don't deserve to have it. They stole it. So nuke them. Well, if you take that position, then that's what's going to happen. And all those people are going to frickin' die. And it'll be wiped off the face of the map. And then the Palestinians can come in and reclaim the land. So if you take that position, then you're going to have a whole lot of death on your hands. Now, the other way around, you're going to defend it and try to preserve it. And you're going to push back against those guys. And now it's escalated to a point where you're going to have a whole lot of death on the other side, too. Now, I don't know where it ends up. I don't live there. I don't really have any skin in the game other than I'd like to not get nuked here. But you know what? That's what it comes down to. So a lot of these guys, including Scott Ritter, who I really like, frankly, that's just a pro-Palestinian position. And that's the reality of it. So don't be coming to me talking about frickin' peace when you're really taking one side, making it sound like you're calling for peace, because that's not what we're getting here. That's not what these people are really talking about. Journalist after journalist after journalist, they are really pro-Palestinian. And while they call for peace and they portray the Palestinians as victims, which they are, but on the other side, you've got a reality. People are living there. It is an established sovereign nation state. It's a homeland. It's been there for quite a long time. It's a reality. It's there. So what do you want to do? Do you want to not send the aid and let the other side overrun it and slaughter the Jews? Well, that's what we're talking about here. If you don't send the aid, they're going to die. or they're going to launch their nukes because you're not giving them the aid, in which case that plunges us into a nuclear war. So cut the half-baked, all your double speak plainly, because now is the time to do that as well. I'm really tired of all this cloaked crapola that we're getting from these pseudo journalists who really are not journalists truly, because they're more activists than journalists, and they're taking a side while pretending to be unbiased. And it's not freaking true. What we need right now is some real neutrality and some real goddamn journalism instead of activism and political posturing, veiled and cloaked, masked. This is just going to get us all killed. So get back to some goddamn real journalistic principles and tell the goddamn truth, or we're all going to die. I'm sick of it.
That's exactly what we talked about on Strange Bedfellows 2 weeks ago, when we did a show all about the death of journalism and how objectivity has been lost in the internet age, and now everybody's a pundit, not a journalist, but they call themselves that.
Lori, you know why I couldn't sleep last night? Because I laid in bed all night long thinking about all of this. You know, it's like, what do I really want? How do I address this as a journalist? What am I doing here? These conflicts, even here in Canada, how do I address these issues, right? And you know what it comes down to, man? I just don't care about anything more than this. I just want peace. That's it. We'll work everything else out, but stop the killing. All right, we just have to stop that. Stop the escalation. I don't want a civil war here to try to solve the war there, because that doesn't solve anything. Stop. Just stop it, man. Just stop the escalation. Dial it all back and sit down and frickin' talk. I know that that's not going to happen, but that's what I'm going to call for, and that's what I'm going to work toward here. That's what I'm doing. And anybody that wants to join me, I'm right over here really, really advocating for peace. Everybody else can go and kill each other if you want, but I'm not in. Count me out. That's my position. I don't care what the politics is or what the country is or anything. I just want peace. And anything that gets us to peace, that's the starting point to solving the problems. Everything else just gets us more death. So no thank you.
Amen to that. That's why I close the show like this. Every show. Peace, peace, everybody. You know? I think our guest finally made it. Yeah. Is he backstage now? He's been having some technical difficulties getting connected, but I think we finally got him in. So now I can read the introduction and bring him in at last. Tyler Nixon is our guest tonight, folks. Sorry for the late start and the rant, but hey, tensions are high right now, and sometimes it's just got to come out, and you know, that's how we feel. That's what we have to say. But I do want to get to our guest, Tyler Nixon, and he'll probably have thoughts on this conflict as well. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Tyler Nixon attended Georgetown University and the University of Virginia Law School, also served in the U.S. Army's Berlin Brigade, did a tour of combat duty in the first Iraq War back in 1991. Later, he served as staff assistant to former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, also worked on the presidential transition team for President George W. Bush in 2001 and on Republican Ron Paul's presidential campaign in 2008. I, too, am a veteran of that war. And let's bring Tyler Nixon in, because I've been looking forward to this for so long, and I think he's finally connected and with us. Can you hear me? Hi.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. We got it worked out. That was so strange. Sorry about that. I have no idea what the heck that
I could hear you. It was very frustrating. I could hear you both and see you both, and yet
But we couldn't see you. But now we can, and I'm so glad you're here.
These miraculous technologies, how dare they shut down on me at the moment of truth, right?
They always do. If it's going to take a crap, I can guarantee you it'll be when we're live on the air. It always does.
It's a privilege to meet you tonight, Tyler.
It's an honor to be on with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to have you. And there's so much to talk about. Of course, we lost some time with those technical difficulties, so I'm going to try and cram it all into an hour and 10 minutes, everything that we want to get into. But first, since the subject is on the table, any thoughts on the escalation between Israel and Hamas?
I've shut out the news today, and I've just been working around my, I'm trying to get to Bobby Kennedy's speech in Philadelphia Monday.
Right.
So
I'm
trying to
You're going, huh?
jump. I'm going. I'm down.
Awesome.
I'm jumping through hoops to try to make that happen. And some days you got to shut it out. So I've listened, and I just pray for peace. That's all I can say.
Amen.
And
Amen,
have
brother.
cooler heads prevail.
Yes. So, you were kind enough to join us. Rick and I were doing a Twitter space the other night about Kennedy's big announcement coming up in Philly on Monday. And I think we're going to be broadcasting that live, won't we, Rick? Are we going to be doing that on Maverick News?
I think so. I believe so.
That's
Yeah.
noon
So you'll be
Eastern.
there on the ground?
We will have reporters on the ground who will be sending us video back, and we'll also have a live stream of the speech. We're going to do live team coverage Monday at noon Eastern. We might go live a little bit early, do some pre-game, talk to people in the crowd. And if you're going to be there, I hope you'll be one of our correspondents on the ground, Tyler. Give us a call.
I'd be glad to do it. And I'm bringing my mother, Eileen
Oh.
Nixon. And
Wow.
I guess I could reveal her age. She just turned 80. She attended President Kennedy's inauguration, as well as his funeral. She filed by his casket in the rotunda. She attended Trinity College and was class of 64. She began at Trinity College in Washington in fall of 1960. So you can imagine she was right there, right when it all happened down. And I oddly, on June 5th, 1968 was my her father, Stanley's 50th birthday. So it's these weird intersections of
Jeez, wow.
of
I
events.
wonder, on this show, I'm always curious
you
about
can imagine they
people's
probably had a birthday party for my grandfather, and then, later that Bobby Kennedy had been killed or shot, at least until it was announced he died. Senior, obviously. You have to say, I guess, senior versus junior. But how about that campaign, though? I mean, I have to say, as a Nixon, I'm a Nixon for Kennedy. This man he seriously, no, I had to live with the name Nixon, obviously. And growing up politically, it was always either one of two questions, any relation,
right?
Or are you going to change your name? I'm like, oh, you're a real hoot, And this is in the Republican Party. So anyway, so I grew up with that, and that's just I felt that Bobby Kennedy, out of all the Kennedys the family, he has been the most I don't want to say pure, because that sounds almost too much, but really just he lives up to what his father, his uncle, the tradition they set, the standards they set. He really lives up to that. I mean, this man is erudite beyond belief. I mean, I'm a pretty well-read person. I mean, you can see the books behind me here. I've read thousands. I mean, I've been a bookworm my entire life. I think reading is the key to wisdom and education, to everything. I mean, it's just But that being said, I started studying the Kennedys by way of my mother's scrapbooks and memorabilia she had collected from what I mentioned. She was there at the funeral. She was there, filed past President Kennedy's casket. And she was there in Washington in the early 60s. And I mean, it had to have been amazingly exciting. The only trip she took away from that in early 63 was to Europe, where she was in Vienna for, I think, half a year. So, right in the middle of the Cold War, and experienced all that. But I found her sort of scrapbox of Life magazine, Look magazine. And I just, they had these brilliant, beautiful colored photos of the Kennedy family. And I thought, this is magical. I mean, this is probably 1976 or 77 that I'm talking about when I did this as a child. And I was just amazed. And then, unfortunately, it ends in this horror. And I just couldn't, even as a little kid, I couldn't get over that. And I just felt like there's something wrong with this. There's something, and I just began more and more reading and from literally probably 10 years old, began getting books. Well, Best Evidence by David Lifton, I mean, amongst others, as one that was sort of really opened my eyes, but began to delve into that. And I've been doing so in the 40 years since. And Bobby Kennedy running for president, I think if he could attain the presidency, if he wins the presidency, it would be like a sort of a karmic realignment or something. It would be like I don't know, everything, all the hashes would be settled, because he will make right what has been torn asunder by the assassinations of both his uncle and his father. And I think he, as a Republican, obviously named Nixon, of course, and I do believe that Teddy Kennedy. That's like, I mean, look, you can say what you will about the Kennedy.
Oh, we froze up.
Oh no! Damn, he was just getting to the good part.
Yeah.
Come back, Tyler. Come back. Oh no!
But I'm eyeing of Rich Nixon.
There he is.
You got me?
It's
Still?
kind of cutting in and out.
Unfortunately, I had to switch to a computer with Wi-Fi because the other one wouldn't. This is the only way I could get through to this. So do you still hear me all right?
So far, there's a bit of a lag, but yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying that, Bobby Kennedy's run, I never thought he would run. I've heard him speak. I'm not. Obviously, we differ on certain. He's got that partisan Democrat. It's in his DNA almost with the Kennedys. I mean, the notion he's going to run as a Republican, I think, is ludicrous. It wouldn't seem right. And I would say, no, don't run as a Republican. Fix the Democrat Party, so we have two, or at least one. We have some viable partisan organizations in this country instead of just the uniparty, disguised as two different parties. I ran as a libertarian Republican, and I know you're very libertarian involved, Laurie, and it would be very interesting if he were to take that path of trying to, or basically being willing to be nominated by the Libertarian Party because of the ballot access issues.
Exactly.
You wouldn't believe. I mean, Delaware. Let me tell you, it is absurd. I mean, I ran for office. I ran for state senate. First, I ran for the nomination for lieutenant governor in the Republican Party in 2004. I ran for state senator in 2006 against a Democrat, entrenched Democrat who was the son of the Congressman Harris McDowell is the name, son of the former congressman. He was a state senator since 1976. This is 2006. I was running, so he'd been there 30 years. The man put out signs in which he misspelled his own name. I swear to God, his name was Harris McDowell. They left an L off his name on the sign. I'm like, oh God. But unfortunately, in Delaware, we have some very entrenched Democrat party. It was basically a 50% Democrat district, which, as you know, means, I mean, you're really fighting gravity if you're only about 27% Republican. That being said, then I ran in 2008 as a fusion candidate as the nominee of both the Libertarian and Republican parties. Now, of course, Delaware immediately dispatched with that and eliminated fusion candidates. We had a big row. But the funny thing is that you look at these ballot access laws, for example, in Delaware. It still shocks me to this day. The state constitution says that we shall have free and equal elections, right? One of the statutes in the state says the device and symbol and name of the Democratic Party shall be first listed in the ballot, meaning like they actually name political parties in the statute and give them
In
first
the
ballot
law?
position. In the law,
Wow.
yes. I'm like, how do you get equal protection of the laws when your political opponent is named and given the first left, like in other words, the ballots and the way they organize the ballot is based on political party, of course. And so I began rumbling about in Delaware about eliminating political parties or partisan, whatever you have from the process, meaning like we should have no. If you were to say no political parties can be listed on any election ballot, meaning that's fine. You can run on a party, but we're not going to print we're going to advertise your party on the public's paid for ballot. Everybody's paying for
I think
this,
that's
right?
how it ought to be.
And the other thing I said was, you know what it ought to be? Like, I mean, honestly, I know it's crazy. You have to articulate the name, whether you say it or whether, someone writes it for you. You can't just walk in and have some cheat sheet. They used to literally in Delaware have a machine where there was a big lever at the top, and it used to be tick down, the mechanical machine.
Yep, I remember those.
You could pull the one big lever, and that would be all Democrat.
Straight
right?
party ticket.
I mean, this straight party ticket. This thing is so rigged for uniparty rule, and considering these laws are in place where the Democratic Party of Delaware has the leftmost ballot position, meaning like when you look at the ballot, it reads left or right, obviously, with the candidates' names, and at the top are the parties. The Democratic Party is the first left column, most left column. I mean, again, how do you laws of that law if you're a libertarian? When I'm somewhere out in I don't know, Timbuktu as far as where my ballot position is, and that
right
matters.
Yeah.
If it these are things I think a voter who they want to vote for, they ought to be able to say the name and know who it is and know the position they're voting for, because this idea we just heard people, it has to be an informed choice. It has to be a conscious choice. It cannot just be lining up bodies, as though there's some sort of like you're collecting poker chips. I mean, this is a sick rendition of politics that is developed, and through these ballot access blockades that we see, like I mentioned in Delaware, let me tell you something. It was very difficult to get Ron Paul on the ballot in Delaware, which I led I was the state director for Delaware.
I remember.
And you'd be surprised what it takes to get signatures. I mean, it is no small feat to go out and get people to sign, to put someone on the ballot.
And you got to get like 3 times as many signatures as you actually need, because they toss out a lot of signatures.
Congressman Mike Castle at the time, and he refused.
The internet's not the best, is it?
I'm sorry.
Well, he's up in the mountains of Colorado. So
this end a little bit.
Lieutenant
Governor. He refused, and I said, Congressman, I said, putting Ron Paul on the ballot, he's one of your fellow congressmen. It doesn't mean that you're endorsing.
And we lost him.
Oh no! Damn, he always cuts out just when we're getting to the good part.
There he is.
Oh,
he's back.
I think he's frozen though. All right, can you hear us? Okay. Are you there, Tyler?
Oh boy.
Oh no. Well, I tell you what. Maybe he can plug in an Ethernet cable, and I'm going to stall for a few minutes since we were just.
I'm frozen to try to not to like.
Damn. Well, we were just speaking of
Wi-Fi's
Delaware.
being strained. I think Saturday night, unfortunately, it's a lot of. Is Mercury in retrograde by any chance?
Probably. We'll blame it on that. I just blame the CIA when things go wrong. I just blame the CIA. What the hell? Why not? But, speaking of Delaware, yeah, can hear you okay. I hope you can hear me, because I'm going to play a clip here.
You're like that Verizon guy. Can you hear me now? Good. Can you hear me now? Good. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the most interesting things about your life story is that as a kid, you grew up with the Biden family there in Delaware. You knew Hunter Biden. You knew Beau Biden when you were kids. I think you went to church together. And of course, now, ironically, as things work out, now this administration, the Biden administration, is coming after your friend, your client, Roger Stone. And I wanted to play for the folks a little clip here. This is from Roger Stone's podcast. He does a show called The Stone Zone. And Tyler's a frequent guest on that program. But he tells the story here, and it's fascinating, about growing up with the Biden family in Delaware. Check it out.
Hey, Tyler, let me ask you a few questions. You grew up in Delaware. You knew both Beau and Hunter Biden as a boy, and you certainly are a long-term observer of Joe Biden. Do you remember Joe Biden being raised in the synagogues of Delaware?
Oh, well, considering I went to church with him every Sunday, no, I don't seem to recall that. There's so many things that, his desegregating the charcoal pit and his civil rights crusade, which he, by the way, just totally admitted were total lies when he withdrew from the presidential campaign.
He says he was arrested in a civil rights demonstration, yet in his biography, he says he never demonstrated. This is the same man, of course.
No, his whole life is everything he's ever said about himself is a fabrication. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, he was campaigning in New Hampshire in 1987. And of course, being the arrogant blowhard and thin-skinned, just egomaniac that he is, and apparently a reporter, back when we had actual reporters and journalists, challenged him or on his academic record. And first thing he says, I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do. And then proceeds to just completely make up an academic record about himself that is just like, I mean, the man, to be able to just invent this from whole cloth and boldly say it in front of a crowd of people, not even just like, shading or slightly embellishing, making it up out of thin air, like he was in the top third of his law school class and he graduated with 3 degrees and 200 credits, whatever it was. And it's just, I mean, and then goes on in that campaign to adopt the life story of Neil Kinnock, with his ancestors from the coal mines of Pennsylvania that come up and play football, right? Literally, almost word for word from British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock. Similarly, took word for word Bobby Kennedy's speeches and gave them, and without attribution, to massive Democratic audiences too. I mean, this man is a complete grifter, a fraud, a crook. There's no two ways about it. And everything, you can't believe anything he says. I can't even believe they try to act as though there's some baseline of Biden truth. There isn't. Everything his whole life's a lie, and it always has been, and he knows it deep down, which is why he's always been.
Tyler, do you recall him teaching law as a law professor in Philadelphia?
No, he did. I believe he was an adjunct professor at Widener University School of Law, which is in Wilmington, for like constitutional law for one course. But he did not teach for 5 years as anything at Penn. He can't even get the facts straight on his lies.
Well, he was raised in the Puerto Rican community of Delaware, except for in 1970, he was elected to the Senate. There were fewer than 2,000 Puerto Rican residents of the state. Look, nothing this guy says is true. But look, you knew Beau Biden. This is the one I find most egregious. When he was with Gold Star Families about 2 weeks ago, he says he and his wife remember so distinctly seeing Beau Biden's flag-draped coffin come back from the conflict in Iraq. Am I incorrect that Beau Biden, the former Attorney General of the state of Delaware, died of brain cancer and not in any military-related action?
He died of brain cancer, glioblastoma. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I mean, there's no definitive proof that it occurred because of the burn pits that he probably encountered. I mean, as I understand it, and Roger, if you could just. I have to plug in this laptop and I could grab the, otherwise I'm going to lose this here. So just give me 1 minute.
All right.
I don't know where Lori went. Are you
no.
there, Lori? Well, you're there, Tyler.
Rick, it's good to meet you.
So nice to meet you too, finally. So any further comment on what we just watched there?
Wow. I've got a lot of stories. I certainly could, ventilate my spleen, as they say. No, I don't. It's kind of a nightmare, really, to have grown up with Joe Biden, knowing what a fool this man is. I don't know how to describe it. What I've said about Joe Biden is Joe Biden has spent his life from an early age trying to prove wrong what he thinks people think of him, right? Mm-hmm. Problem is that what people think of him is correct, that he's a lightweight, that he's an egomaniac, but he constantly is trying to always, it's this like competitive, almost like juvenile, I got to outdo the other guy. And that's why you get things. If you go to my one of my YouTube channels, you'll see a video when he first talked about taking his opponent out behind the gym, and beating him when he threatened to beat up Donald Trump. I mean, this is just, I mean, it's like, Joe, you need to be back in the high school locker room. You'd have been a better football coach. This man is not fit for office. He never has been. But unfortunately, he's also, besides the BS aspect of his character and the completely just willing to spin off and say anything that needs to be said and tell anyone what they want to hear in order to get his objective. There's a lust, a cunning for power, to be the top dog, and clearly to live an opulent lifestyle, because he's never, the houses that he lives in Delaware are, believe me, it's the top tier. I mean, I think he always looked upon the DuPont's, family DuPont, and the wealthy people in Delaware, and thought that that should be me, and he figured he knew he wasn't smart enough, and didn't have what it took in terms of building a business. So he figured, hey, politics, that's the easy path. That's the way you can work you can get paid to just run around and shoot your mouth off and play games, and you're not really accountable, but every 6 years if you're a U.S. senator. It's really a dream job for someone like that. But it's a nightmare for our country and for our state. Yeah. It certainly was.
Yeah. I'm Canadian, so I watch U.S. politics from the north. And you're a lawyer involved in a legal system representing a client like Roger Stone, who is in the middle of this huge political storm. My question to you is what we're watching actually real? It just seems to me like we keep going through these. It's like we're watching a movie.
Theater.
It's like theater. Yeah. It's like we're going to go after this guy and we're going to use lawfare to attack this candidate. And Donald Trump's going to be in jail. Hillary Clinton, lock her up. And, she smashed her servers with a hammer. But nothing ever really seems to happen, with rare exceptions where it's like the average ordinary person, like the people involved in the J6 incident, might end up in jail. But with the politicians and the prominent figures, for the most part, it seems like nothing ever happens. And I think because it seems like there's never any consequence for someone like Hunter Biden with his laptop scandal, or Joe Biden. It's like people have lost confidence in the system. Is it real, or is this all a bunch of fake crap, like political theater?
I mean, to be honest, I struggle with this all the time, because it really is demoralizing, and the fact that, there is no, I've said this about Donald Trump, that, if he's expecting someone to ride into the rescue, no, that's not going to happen, because we're the ones who have to rescue ourselves from the situation, because we are, in the United States, at least, we have been a titular, in recent years, self-governing, consensually self-governing free people. But, I think we've got this Leviathan unitary government in Washington that's grown totally out of control. It's even beyond the control of the people we elect to control it, to the extent that they can accumulate power. This is, I really hate to say it, but it's the ooze of the Clintons that slithered into Washington in 1992. And brought in this idea that you can't be shamed out of politics, no matter how sleazy, how exposed you are, no matter how much corruption is black and white on paper right in front of you. Oh my God, here it is. Here's you could literally serve up a confession signed by Hillary Clinton herself and film, videotape, and she would deny it. And they would say, no, that was, they would have some way of wiggling around it and getting around it. The death of shame, the inability to, and frankly, the co-opting and the total corruption of the media, which began, ironically, under Richard Nixon, I think, really, when it went from being reporting to, we're going to get this guy. Right. And the intelligence, obviously, Operation, the Mockingbird elements have, done what they needed to do. They've totally infiltrated these major media organizations, and it shows. And the problem is this is something it's a cancer that's been metastasizing over at least 50, if not 100 years. I mean, at least a century. If you look back to the sort of the growth of the technocratic, state, Woodrow Wilson, I mean, who brought in the income tax and the Federal Reserve in one fell swoop in the same year, 1913. I mean, God help us. And frankly, was at the end of his term an invalid, and his wife ran things. Familiar? The Democrats seem to like that paradigm of governance. But that being said, this has been built. This progressive technocratic police state has been sort of, it's been nipping at the heels of the Republic for the better part of 100 years. And, can we get back the Republic? Can we return to being a self-governing free people? I don't know. I mean, what can we do it without there being bloodshed, without there being a civil war, without there having to be armed conflict? I don't know. I think that maybe the technological advances allow for people to be informed, but does that mean we can communicate with each other and organize, or does it just mean that we're more closely informed about the collapse of our country and the collapse of liberty and freedom as we knew it? People are distracted so much these days. I mean, and add on the economic peril that we're all in. You look at, my God, the inflation. Just go to the grocery store. It's staggering what working families are hit with. And you see the Republican Party now. You see these role reversal where the Democrats represent the billionaires and the technocratic elites. And frankly, in a form of fascism. I mean, I kind of have to, I let them go, but I mean, a lot of my fellow patriots say, "Oh, these communists." It's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I wish they were communists. They're fascists, because communists really are just, fascists are communists with money, with a lot of wealth and backing. And it's the corporate, and Bobby Kennedy couldn't have said it better. I mean, he goes by the definition that I've gone by for at least 20 years, which you can also find at the Foundation for Economic Freedom, or Foundation for, forget the name exactly, but if you Google the term fascism, you'll see it's the merger of the state and concentrated wealth or corporate power.
Right. Yeah,
and
public-private partnerships with the government allowing private ownership of corporations, but the government really dictating where the production will go, or controlling those big corporations with subsidies, grants, tax breaks, regulations.
Yeah, it's absolutely hand in glove. It's like there's no way to say which, where the state begins and the corporations end, because in other words, the people who run the government are appendages of the corporation, corporate interests, the wealthy elites, and similarly, these big corporations, and we see it in tech, the big tech now, are an appendage of the government. They carry out the censorship and the things that are, under our Constitution, not allowed by the government is prohibited from doing so. But they just have their so-called private partners act in this regard. And either way, I mean, whether it's communism, fascism, socialism, I've always said it's authoritarian or totalitarian statism, and that's really what it comes down to. Collectivism.
I do agree with that. Yep, absolutely. Let me ask you a question. This is maybe a little down the side road, but I want your opinion on this. We have a big populist movement growing here in Canada, and to me, the words "we the people," that's a very American thing, but it's been embraced here by the populist movement. And so when I hear that phrase, for the longest time, I've had trouble wrapping my head around its use here and in the U.S. too, by the populist movement down there. But to me, that always represented a reference to individual rights and freedoms, individual liberty. But I've come to realize, I think, that what's really happened here is it's been sort of flipped upside down by the populist movement here, so that the people embracing it are actually
authoritarian.
Well, yeah, kind of authoritarian, and they see it as a collectivist thing. It's like we the people in a collectivist sense, so that there's still it's just it hit me over the head within the last couple of weeks that to me we the people represented the United States, which always to me was about we the people as individuals working
right.
together for individual liberty, right? And individual rights and freedoms. But now it's like it's we the people as a collective. And the thing that really drove that home for me was a guy who's like a podcaster. It doesn't matter who it is, but he's Canadian. He uses we the people all over everything because he's sort of a sovereign citizen, common law advocate guy. But he starts his podcast now with this song all about communism. And I'm
Well,
like,
I was
wait,
going to say that sounds like the dictatorship of
minute.
the proletariat to me.
like, wait a minute, like we the people. Oh, you mean we the people
Interesting.
as a collective. So am I on the right track here now finally? I may be a little slow on the uptake sometimes. It's only taken me years and years to sort of clue into this. Was I like totally off track on this?
You're spot on. And it reflects the intellectual and logical incoherence of any sort of totalitarian, leftist, or whatever you want to call it, ideology. Their ideological underpinnings come down to just one thing: coercion. They're going to force you to do what they want you to do.
It's baked into their ideology and the system. It has to be there.
Yeah, and it's actually you've heard the phrase, "Oh, liberalism is a mental disorder," kind of thing. Well, first of all, I don't like the fact they hijacked a good word. Liberal, liber is the Latin root liber, free, to be free. Right. Liberty, for example. I mean, I said let's take it back. That's why I call them leftists. I don't call them liberals. They're not liberals by any stretch of the imagination, classical or otherwise. But that being said, liberalism is not a mental disorder. It's that fundamentally disordered control freaks are attracted to that ideology. Because like Joe Biden, for example, oh, look, I can be the big guy, big shot. I can can I use profanity?
You sure can. You just swear up a
Joe
storm
Biden, I can bullshit
to.
everybody, and snow job them and tell everybody what they want to hear, which is how he got elected to the United States Senate. I know a lady who's a fine, she's a liberal, right? She's one of these people who realize that maybe we shouldn't have gun control. You can tell a true liberal from a leftist because a liberal will still maintain those values, but say, you know what? I don't think we need gun control anymore. I don't agree with that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I think it's interesting to see that it used to be almost 50-50 in the United States in terms of support for gun control measures or even outright bans of guns. And that absolutely has declined to where now I think if you took most polls indicate that, I don't know, they're trying to brainwash the youth, with these serial mass shootings, quote unquote, even though there's mass shootings every weekend in Chicago. You don't hear about those, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that's exactly why, if you don't mind me interrupting, I think that's why a lot of these liberals are changing their tune, because they have to live in crime-ridden big cities run by Democrats. The crime is so out of control, they don't like feeling defenseless in their home or when they go out on the street. They want a firearm for self-defense. Now common sense kicks in, that self-preservation instinct kicks in, because they're human, for crying out loud.
Absolutely. I mean, and here's the thing. I think that Thomas Jefferson once said that to deny a man the access to an individual access to a firearm or to a weapon would be akin to denying someone the access to a heavy coat in a cold winter. To when they go outside. I mean, it's literally that's what it's like. You're forcing someone to potentially freeze to death. I mean, it's that elemental. Yeah. It's that fundamental and basic. And here's the thing: is that they don't view. Leftist ideology, whatever totalitarian ideology. It just comes down to force. It comes down to I'm better than you. I know better than you. And, this is why you see the intellectual arrogance or the egoism. And when they don't want to debate you, right? But they want to have their ready-made talking points where they can have their little their little tropes and tricks and their sophistry to sort of make their point. But really, what it comes down to is deceit and coercion. They'll lie to you. They will tell you anything you want to hear. As alluding to Joe Biden, ran around the state. This lady I mentioned, 1972. She's a liberal because she's not a leftist. She said he would go to the she was a young anti-war activist at that time. Joe went to the anti-war crowd, said, yes, we're going to end the war in Vietnam, and went to the pro-war, or the sort of more traditional crowd, said, no, we got to win this war. He would tell everybody what they wanted to hear, and that's how he barely edged out Caleb Boggs. That, and basically having Frank Sheeran, who was the guy who killed Jimmy Hoffa, arrange a little strike or a little mini sort of event at the News Journal, the local newspaper, so that Caleb Boggs's major piece that was supposed to be with the paper didn't go out the weekend before the election. So
fascinating.
But that
That's
being
a story
said,
I had never heard.
Yeah, it is. It's very true, because it's in actually Sheeran. His biography was written by someone who is an attorney in Delaware, who's a friend of mine. Or well, not a friend, I shouldn't say he's a friend of mine, but a friend of mine. It's his stepfather, and his name is Charlie Brandt. And Charlie's a good guy. He's a good attorney, and he interviewed Sheeran extensively. And Sheeran on his deathbed said, "Oh yeah," he said, in '72, we made sure that he was a Teamster. Again, he confessed to killing Jimmy Hoffa. So this is he's saying that they helped Biden win again by creating a strike that all this, because it was a razor thin margin. And the Biden won by a razor thin margin. His wife and daughter were killed the next, that just like a month later in a car accident. But, even that, as I've said before, he embellished that. He lied about that. He went around the country and it did so for many years, saying, my wife and daughter were killed by a guy who drank his lunch. That is the most despicable, defamatory lie I can imagine, because the man was not in the slightest, drank his lunch. He did not. He was a sober as a judge truck driver. Nelia Biden just pulled out right in front of him on Route 41, I believe. And just, he couldn't avoid it in the station wagon. And she and the baby were killed. And I guess the boys, Bo and Hunt, were in the back seat, or probably in the way back, and they survived, injured. But, it's a horrifying thing. I have to say, living through something like that, it's got to be just unbelievable for anybody. And Joe Biden certainly had to live through it, and he was a wreck. He was a total mess. He was lost for the longest time after that. And look, I would think someone might gain some wisdom, might gain some, maybe be a little more circumspect out of that. He didn't. He used his wife and daughter's death for political, sympathy, whatever you want to call it, wherever it was a convenient political prop for him to trot that out. The most basic, like horrifying, the drawing on people's empathy or sympathy to make political mileage for himself. And it is always, and nobody wanted to, and the thing is, he did it in a way where you could not challenge him, because, oh my gosh, you can't say anything about that. Joe Biden, that's awful. How could you say that about him?
Now he does it with his son, Bo.
Mileage out of his wife's death. Yeah. And I know.
The same thing with Bo.
Do you really look? His book. Joe Biden came out with his book after he was vice president. After, I guess, Bo had died. It was called "Promise Me, Dad." Yeah. Bo Biden's dying wish was, you have to be president, Dad. I don't know. I don't look. Bo was very much behind his dad's run. He was very much his father's son in the sense of, well, I shouldn't say that, because I think Bo was a better man than Joe Biden was, certainly. Joe was just a shanty Irish crook. I think Bo was, child of privilege, but he had integrity on some level. You know what I mean? He wasn't, it's odd. It's, you'd think Hunter Hunt Biden, look, Hunt is just, he's spun out of control. I just think he just realized, especially after Bo died, I think it was just like, that was the only backstop to his total degeneracy, was that Bo was a straight arrow, was a pretty morally upright guy, and that he had a future, and that anything Hunter did might affect that future. After he died, all bets are off. It was just like, pedal to the metal, baby. Anything I want, and I question whether Bo would have
with his dead brother's wife. Remember that?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, and let me tell you something. I've always felt that, I've always noticed, and I don't know what it is. I've had friends over the years. What is it with, like, nice guys attract the bitchiest, really cool, good guys? You know what I mean? And I'm not. This is not being. I'm sure Probably
It's true, though.
example of that.
A lot of truth in that.
But that being said, no, it really is. It's like the opposites of just. I mean, I don't know. The impression I got from her was always this arrogant, looking down her nose. Kathleen Biden, Hunt's wife or ex-wife now. I liked her a lot. She was a warm lady, a very, very nice person, and certainly didn't deserve what she signed it. I don't think she had realized what she was signing up for. But she was always very, didn't play the imperious, looking down her nose at you. Whereas, Bo's wife, Hallie, was just a bitch on wheels as far as I'm concerned. And Hallie, if you're listening, you're a bitch, okay? And guess what? You're exposed. End of story. I mean, you're exactly what I thought you were all along, a degenerate grifter hanger-on. And frankly, you should have straightened him out, not taken him down the tubes with you. Anyway, so back to the show. Because who knows who watches this? I mean,
I'm curious to ask you, since you knew the boys when they were young. You're one of the few people, maybe the only person I've ever met, who actually knew Hunter Biden when he was sober. And I'm just curious to ask you, what is he like sober?
Boring, not interesting, uneducated, almost illiterate, but nice. I will say this about Hunt. He's always been not nice. I mean, I don't know how to, it's kind of one of these deals where it's like, sure, I'm sure Dr. Evil was nice to people around him or something. I shouldn't say that. No, that's not true. That's not a good analogy. No, I was always very fond of Hunter, actually, because I thought he was more personable in the sense of being real with you. Bo was very Bo would sort of keep you at arm's length, I mean, he knew they called him the senator. He was on his way to the big victory. Hunt was more down to earth, I guess, but he was also, you could tell that they were not raised by any sort of, there was no authority in the family, meaning when Nelia died, Joe was an absentee father. Valerie, I'm sure, did what she could, as well as I think Jimmy stepped in as the uncle and did what they could. But it's kind of like there's this sort of wild child aspect where not only are they privileged, not only are they untouchable, but they're also don't have any parental supervision. So it's just a recipe for disaster, and it produces exactly what we see in Hunter Biden today. Throughout his life, which is just this big Lord Fauntleroy kind of thing. And it's not, I don't recognize, I guess, unfortunately, I always thought he was a decent enough guy, but I always knew there was a ruthlessness in terms of protecting his interests. And I sensed that, and that, no matter what it came down to, everybody's expendable relative to their interests. And that's where the way Joe Biden is. I've been sort of drafting a book that I might still write it. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those deals where it's like, ugh, do I expose myself to this by just, writing this book about the Bidens over the years? And I was going to title it originally Political Animal, which is what Joe Biden is. He's a political animal. Title. I mean, it's almost, a feral, it's as though everything he is driven by his everything comes down to a calculation of political survival and advantage, so it becomes predatory, everything that would define what you think of as an animal. Joe Biden basically fits that. And I was saying basically that I was going to call, if I wrote it about everybody said, call it what you originally said when I first was working with Roger and Joe was going to run. I said Biden crime family, because people didn't want to use that, but obviously it wasn't used until probably he began running. But I said, I don't know, it was originally going to be that, but I think political animals is what they are. And, you think about the traits of an animal versus we're all animals in a sense, right? It's just a question of what are they, what makes us human versus being animals. We're human animals are things like, concern for other people, like sympathy, empathy, emotional connections, and not just, it's blood thirsty, cutthroat, like whatever it takes. You'll slice anybody out of the equation. You'll go to any measure to survive, claw your way to the, and that's, I mean, like, as I said, using his wife's death and the death of his wife and daughter, which is such a horrible yet intimate thing. It just reflects someone who just has no, and then again, like you said, I said, using his son's death. How can we capitalize on this? I mean, it's just, it's mercenary. It's sinister. It's beyond mercenary, really. Like I said, it's animalistic. It's like, whatever it takes to get to the prize,
But there's never been any low too low for Joe. I mean, he lied about his academic credentials. He plagiarized every speech he ever gave, I think. He lied about his own wife and child's death, lied about Bo's death. I mean, there's no low too low. He is a political animal. I think that's a perfect title for your book. And so now we have a situation where, once again, they're coming after not only Donald Trump, but everybody close to Donald Trump. This is all Biden's doing. And now Hunter Biden is suing Giuliani and your client and friend, Roger Stone, for invading his privacy. Is that explain the lawsuit to me, if you would, please, and tell me what it's all about.
Unless breaking news here, Roger is not being sued. And thank God for that.
He was.
He was subpoenaed. That was what was brought
subpoenaed.
up.
Okay.
Right. So they're on this fishing expedition to try to get a hold of all of Roger Stone's personal messages, which I got news for them, at least in my communications with him. And by the way, I'm his personal counsel. So, a lot of that is privileged discussions of legal tactics and things like that. But they're going to be surprisingly disappointed, because it's exactly what we say on the air. I mean, there's no changeover. There's no, the problem is I think with a lot of these leftists and Democrats is they don't realize, like, when you're dealing generally with like conservatives, libertarians, and I mean genuine people who are intellectually honest people. We don't like go in the back room and like come up with some scheme and then go out and put a narrative out there. It's the same thing we're saying back behind the scenes as we are out front, and because we don't have anything to hide in terms of our politics. We're not bullshitting you. What we say is what we mean. And in their case, though, it's like the Clintons I mentioned at the beginning, the Clintons oozing into Washington. The other thing they brought, besides the death of shame or the inability to shame people out of politics and the co-opting the media, was the narrative. Back then it was called spin, right? Oh, the spin. It was the spin doctors, but now it's the narrative. I need reality narrated to me, right? I'm so stupid. I mean, this is what they think of people and the citizens. I need a story told to me when I'm living it. Give me a friggin' break.
Fairy tales, as Jim Garrison called them.
Exactly. And it's like in the case of Biden, Roger Stone, they're going to be sadly and sorely disappointed, because, like I said, it's just going to be the only thing that would be maybe revealing is how little we think of these people, and these are scumbags. I mean, my God, these federal criminals, these are criminals. To me, there's no worse criminal than a corrupted prosecutor who denies the possibility of justice or serves up injustice in the role with these powers that we particularly invest in them. And that's a real problem in our system. It's been something where and in the federal system, it's run amok, where I was really just like, wow, why even be in the law anymore? Because these people are they have totally thoroughly corrupted. I mean, and to the point of the judges are in on it too. I mean, that's like,
absolutely.
Whoa. And it's to the point where I believe, and I've been said and should be proposed. In fact, I'm working with a congressional candidate. He said, I said, this should be the first bill you write. He said, you write it for me. And I said, you bet I will. And that is to absolutely abolish the federal district court for Washington, D.C. That has become a pit, a viper's pit, a haven of sandbag leftist, just like protecting. It's where justice goes to die. And it's not necessary that we have a federal district court for that city, or any courts in that city. They can be handled by the surrounding jurisdictions, however you want to dole it out. But if you look at it, it's become, and not to mention the populace of the district is 91% Democrat registered.
Oh, yeah.
How can you possibly, in any functioning reality that recognizes something called equity or fairness, the equities, and not equity like social justice equity. I mean, actual equity, where you can say that in a partisan political case, you can fairly try someone who's a high profile figure when 91% of the jury pool is from the opposite side, who, by the way, has the hallmark of their ideology or their political whatever have you is to hate the man or hate this particular, it's not just a matter of we oppose you, it's a jockeying for, no, they hate.
I mean, it's impossible. There's no way in jury selection you could possibly get a fair jury in a district where it's 91% Democrat, for crying out loud.
And the judge herself, of course, is in the case of, I'm jumping over from Giuliani's case to Donald Trump's persecution, and I say that very specifically, persecution. He's not being prosecuted; he's being persecuted. He's absolutely these. I mean, as someone I've been a lawyer for 20 years, and before that, I studied the Constitution and law for probably another 20. I'm 52 years old, and let me tell you something. These cases are a travesty of justice and factual, just the facts generally. I mean, just as Roger Stone's case was an incredible contrivance, an unbelievably thin bunch of bullshit, cherry-picked by Andrew Weissman that had contradictory facts that used things like media reports as so-called evidence. But they knew they could get away with it because guess why? The media, it comes back to ultimately, 50 years ago, Walter Cronkite, these guys, all these, sort of luminaries in the media, they weren't going to risk their reputations trying to somehow cover for some corrupt politician.
That's right.
We have the exact opposite nowadays. We have the almost overnight, and it probably goes back to the Smith-Mundt deal as well as Operation Mockingbird as the Smith-Mundt, I don't know if you're familiar with, they basically allowed domestic propaganda.
Yep.
Essentially what we have now, we don't have media. We have corporate propaganda for one political party or a political sect, you could say, because it goes obviously beyond. The Democrat Party is the font of it, but basically it goes into the intelligence community and now the law enforcement community at the federal level, the defense. They've been drilling into the defense community for a long time now, and now we see that beginning to take fruition with people like this Mark Milley general who was just literally committing treason, telling the head of the Chinese military, "I'll let you know if." What? You're going to tell the head of the Chinese military if the president of the United States is doing anything that might harm China or is making any moves? That is like ludicrous. They've been drilling into these institutions, and the media, I think, it's crazy because there used to be like CNN, the trusted name in news. It used to be there was always a lefty slant sort of in the media, and look, it was very subtle. But it was there, and it was definitely, they were hostile to Reagan, they were hostile to Nixon, but they couldn't, give LBJ enough passes, and Kennedy was lionized, which is ironic considering that now they treat Robert F. Kennedy Jr. like shit. I mean, it's
no joke. No joke. I think you froze up.
Because every November 22nd, there was something on the Kennedys. Every November 22nd, and you would have lionizing this family. And overnight, he begins to run with the same values and ethics, maybe even more so, of his father and his uncle, and truly lives up to the Kennedy name and to what that family represented and what they talked about. And he's savaged by them. He's treated like a piece of garbage. I mean, these people are degenerates. They're not. There's no. Again, they're not. They're not objective. They are not neutral, and we cannot treat them as though they are basically just the megaphone for a propaganda machine. And thank God that we have broadcasts like yours and that we have so many now outlets, just flourishing all over the world, where people can talk to each other and realize this is a bunch of bullshit that we're getting from these people, and realize the truth. And, the older generation, I think, like the Trump, Roger Stone, it's like always, you see what the New York Times says, Roger. I say to him, Roger, you got to stop caring what the New York Times says, okay? Nobody cares what the New York Times says except the New York Times and that ilk. It's like this is they've become basically the establishment talking to itself, trying to justify on the basis of what was sort of traditional like standards, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Well, and the Bidens lived by this. Like, if you're caught with drugs, your career's over. Like that's like all these sort of like, if this scandal or this, you can't do this, like these sort of like ethical rules. But
it's okay if his son
wrangle
gets
their way.
caught with massive amounts of drugs.
Well, yeah,
that's
it's
fine.
all over now. I mean, it's totally, that's just it. Yeah, the bottom has dropped out. There's no, I mean, drugs, that's the least of it. I mean, come on. Like, I don't care if someone does drugs. If you perform your job, which we can certainly talk about that aspect of it. I mean, I've been fighting the drug war. It's amazing to me that Joe Biden it's unbelievable the damage that this man did as a senator with the Biden crime bills and the drug laws that he promulgated, and was at the forefront of trying to out law and order the Republicans and in the Reagan era. I mean, this man was dangerous, and the destruction that if you just lopped off his presidency and it didn't even exist and it never happened, he would still have done more damage to this country and to the black communities of this around the urban black communities in this country than I think will ever be able to be calculated. He is just, the man is a monster. He's a cancer on this country. And what's crazy is he's too senile to really ever be held to account in his mind. You know what I mean? Like, meaning he'll never feel the brunt of what he deserves in terms of justice. That he should be reviled and laughed out of history.
They're going to give him a pass like they do with all those old Nazis, like the 98-year-old Nazi up in Canada. They're going to totally give him a pass because they'll say he's too old, he's too fragile.
Yeah,
we can't hold him accountable now.
So he got away with it. Just let it go.
So he got away with it.
Jeez, yeah, it's awful. I don't feel any. I wouldn't feel any remorse to see the liquidation, frankly, to use the term lightly, of George Soros, of these people who are mass murderers, as far as I'm concerned, who have wrought destruction on an untold scale. It's just like, what? I don't have sympathy for that. That's an animal. That's not a human being. That is a demon. I don't know, if you want to use
that's the way I've
terms.
always felt about it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think that sometimes I'd go so far as to say that Stalin didn't kill enough Nazis after World War II, and that's why we still have a Nazi problem today. I think they should have gone to the wall. I'm not a big fan.
That was like, that's like watching sharks against the sharks fight sharks.
Talk about animals.
Stalin was. I mean, what did they say in the what was the movie with Jeff Bridges? Where he says, say what. Yes, and he says, say what you will of National Socialism. At least it's an ethos, right? And I mean, Hitler was a thought out animal. Stalin was just a savage. I mean, he killed everybody. I mean, my God, his own intelligentsia. That's the Nazis didn't even go as far as that. Which when you talk about Soviet communism or Mao, frankly, same thing. Not in any way, believe me, they're all left wing, and this is crazy. Like, to try to call the Nazis a right wing ideology. It's National Socialism. What are you talking about? It's collectivism. It's coercion, and it makes me laugh. I mean, it makes their heads explode. But I said, sorry, but all authoritarian ideologies are leftist. You can't call like Nazis right wing. I said, where does that leave libertarians or anarchists?
They
like,
call
I guess where are we?
Nazis.
Like, no, I'm sorry. The right wing is like anarchy. I mean, to be honest, folks, libertarian. I'm an anarchist. Not I'm not gonna.
So was my dad. He taught me.
There's
that.
no question. Or voluntarist. Let's just say. I don't.
Yes.
I don't see. I have yet to find the logical syllogism that says that any form of authority that's imposed on anyone by whatever have you, this collective of people, is legitimate, has any sort of like inherent authority to it. That we were talking about. In fact, Rick, you said at the beginning, "We the people." You raised a very interesting question about that. One thing that I thought the bulletproof argument, and I would say check out Larkin Rose. He's a great guy. He's a voice in the wilderness, but he's so unassailable. And he wrote he has a book and also a sort of a long form, I guess, almost a documentary. It's called The Most Dangerous Superstition. And the most dangerous superstition is statism. This idea that the state is this all powerful entity that, has these superpowers that, and it's akin to a religion. It has its It has its, Bibles or its scriptures, so to speak, in the laws. It's got its ceremonies. It's, whatever we call it, high masses, and it's got its temples all around. And it's got its high priests. It really is akin to that. But one of the things that I think logically you can say is, if one person cannot do something to another person, no amount of people getting together in terms of like righteousness, no amount of people getting together who have that, can't do that together, cannot then suddenly do that to one person. So meaning if I can't rob you one-on-one, then how do I get to rob you by getting together with 1 million people? This doesn't make it any more right. Meaning like the collectivist, the notion of the collective does not impart any more power.
I believe that's called the IRS.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
which
true.
I understand
look,
you'd like to abolish, and so would I. I've heard you say that you want to abolish the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA, and I couldn't agree more. My guy, Ron Paul's been saying that for 40 years, and I'm totally on board with that. I think that's
now more than ever.
now more than ever, especially when you look at the Biden administration, the 87,000 IRS agents to come collect from you for the collective. When you look at the FBI that's so out of control, this DOJ that's so out of control, and they've made your friend, your client, Roger Stone, a perennial target. They will not leave this man alone. And now they're coming after him again. Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit, getting back to Stone. My dad was a prosecutor, district attorney. I grew up in a family of lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, but I have a love for it. And I have a love for the art of lawyering. And sometimes I wonder, I know. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be Roger Stone's lawyer, because he wouldn't be the easiest client to manage. And
to say the least.
I'm going to play you an example.
A lot of exploding heads in our cranks, let's just say.
I can only imagine, my friend. I'm going to play you guys a clip. Now, this is a few years ago. It was a deposition that was being taken, I believe, by Larry Klayman, founder of Judicial Watch. And this is just classic. This is why I would not want to be Roger Stone's lawyer.
If you want to keep insulting me, this will be over. You can run back to the judge like a little.
Better do it quick.
Before you're disbarred.
Stop. Mr. Klayman.
No further questions. This deposition is concluded for now, subject to my going back and moving the court to produce all the documents that we requested.
Subject to your still being admitted to the bar. Please note that for the record. You have nothing. This proves nothing.
That's what you told Mueller, right? You have nothing. That's what your clients argued at the trial.
I'm not going to discuss the criminal case. If you want to keep insulting me, this will be over. You can run back to the judge like a little.
I'm doing what?
If you want to keep insulting me, I will just end this and you go running back to the judge.
Did you just call me
You're acting like one.
Now, what is according to you?
What's the point of that?
I'm entitled to know what you meant by
Like a
Come on.
What is it?
You don't know?
Stop.
You're unfamiliar with the term?
You're going to wind up getting sanctioned, Mr. Bichot.
No, you're going to wind up getting sanctioned,
This
Mr. Like you are in D.C. So let's go.
Let's not do that.
Why not?
Continue.
Not going to be badgered by the.
Badgered.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am. You got nothing. You're not going to get anything by interviewing him because it's not true.
If you've withheld it, can I?
I haven't withheld it. You prove I withheld it, do that. But you don't have to do that either.
Oh, we'll look for it.
You can look for it all you want. You'll find nothing. Okay. I doubt this case will get very far because it's a conspiracy theory based on no evidence.
Conspiracies happen, don't they, Mr. Stone?
They do, but in this case, it's a fantasy.
Can you
on
ask
your
a
part.
question that's relevant
You're delusional.
to your
You're
lawsuit?
deeply delusional.
Are you saying I'm mentally unstable?
That's not what I said. I said you're delusional.
Stop. Ask a question a lawyer would ask, please.
I am a lawyer.
You could fool me. How come you can't practice in the Southern District? Why won't they let you practice there if you're Mr. Ethical?
I can practice in Southern District.
Stop.
Only if you attach the judge's order.
I have a case right now.
Stop.
In fact, you're aware that I have a case right now.
I'm not aware that you have a case in there, but I doubt it.
you also released that story to Al Kamen of the Washington Post.
Absolutely, completely false. You have no evidence of that. It's defamatory.
You have.
Stop defaming me.
You have.
You know that I have a following among conservatives. Stop defaming me, Mr. Clayton. Absolutely, completely false. You have no evidence of that. False. Completely false. Categorically false.
Objection.
Completely and totally false. That is entirely false. False. Incorrect. False. That is incorrect. I have never said anything of the kind. That's false, to be clear. Do you have any evidence of that? You have no evidence to the contrary. There was no evidence of that. Do you have any proof? Evidence? Real evidence? Not just wild conjecture. Evidence. And you have no evidence of it. No evidence. There is no evidence of that because it's not true. Proof. Evidence, Larry.
Is that
evidence.
insane?
Proof, Larry. Evidence. Proof. Evidence.
Who talked?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
No, I don't.
You're lying, aren't you, Mr. Stone?
No, you're lying, aren't you,
You're a
Mr.
convicted
Clayton?
liar, aren't you?
Stop.
And you're about to be ousted from the bar.
Stop. Let's take a break. Good time for a break.
Have fun molesting your own children, Larry? I read the court decision.
You read that, huh?
Yeah, I did.
You didn't read anything else.
You.
Are we off the record?
Yes.
Roger Stone did nothing wrong. Roger Stone did nothing wrong.
It's just priceless. Oh, my goodness.
As outlandish as it sounds, he's right. Roger was right. Larry Klayman.
He was. And
Larry
he was right about
Klayman
Larry
is-
Klayman,
used to
who
run
did
Judicial
lose his
Watch.
license.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Klayman
Yeah, he
was
ran Judicial
booted
Watch.
from his own organization. He started.
That's
Now it's
right.
run by Tom Fitton, thank God.
And he
Klayman
did
is
get
a
suspended.
serial. He's the ambulance chaser if there ever was one. I mean, it's
Yep.
insane. And I think Roger certainly. Roger says I'm Sicilian. I'm half Sicilian, which he is. Roger's got a hot temper, and I think he was at a boiling point. I mean, how much can you heap onto one man? And I think that's why they do it. They know that he's volatile that way sometimes. He's definitely different. He's come through the crucible intact, and I'll say that for him. And look, Roger's no saint. He'd never tell you that. I mean, but he's certainly. I mean, compared to the Clintons and these people, Roger is definitely a choir boy comparatively. I mean, it's a joke. Like they talk about quote dirty tricks, which is another big lie. They used to talk about Stone, self-described dirty trickster Roger Stone. That is the first. If you read that, you've read an immediate lie. He has never described himself as a dirty trickster ever, anywhere. In fact, the Los Angeles Times had to retract a portion of a story because they said that, and he said, "I'm gonna, that's wrong." And so they could not find anywhere where it's one of these leftist propagated tropes they use, and Roger, I feel for him because they really have they've been even though we still stand up and fight, they've been successful at kneecapping this man. They've been successful at they were successful just as they did with the Trump presidency. As much good has happened under President Trump. Whether you agree or not, I mean, you can't deny the economic aspects of it, and certainly the fact that we didn't get into any more interventions overseas, and that things were pretty good. I mean, it shows to me that these people's emotional dysfunction because they hate one man. Like, I mean, Trump's derangement really is an actual, I think, affliction.
Oh, it's a thing.
Like, you're willing to burn the world down and throw everything to hell just to get one man, And it's and including the justice system now, and the integrity of our entire system is at stake. Where these pygmies, these mercenary pygmies, come out of the woodwork and are indicting them all over the country in succession. I mean, it's just, and it's like you're only clever by half. Do you really think people believe this bullshit that you're putting out here? Do you really think? But you know what? They can use the systems, the levers, the mechanics of the system to grind a guy up. And there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, like literally, if it comes down to it, I mean, and when they do this and when people know it's phony, it's like, you're risking like whether people will begin to think, do I need to obey any of these laws? Do I need to, observe anything that is passed as quote law? And comes back to what I was saying about this idea of, sort of anarchism or voluntarism, where it's like, where do you get off sending these people? Why am I living, for example, in the drug laws under some, strict liability criminal offense with incredibly harsh draconian penalties merely for possession? You don't even have to have intent, you just have to be in physical possession of something, which has never been justified in any way
And that's
And
what
he
they
froze
did.
again.
Other than just
Yeah.
sort of moral, whatever. Our living under drug laws written by people who've been dead for 100 years in some cases.
Written by a church
And
lady
I'm
100
like, you
years
guys,
ago.
they must think that, and that's why we see the FBI so much more in action, because it comes down to, well, we're just going to come and bust the door down with a mob and take you away. We're just
Like
going
they did to Roger.
It's come down to, coercion comes in many forms, but ultimately it's physical violence, and that's what they're down to now. And don't think that it's not going to continue to propagate if we don't stop it now and halt it and get these people who are the real criminals, frankly, under control.
Damn right. And there's something I want to get you and Rick to talk about something, actually, because you're both big car guys. Rick, he produces the SST car show. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's quite the car
that's
guy.
where I recognize you. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
you two have that in common, and I want you guys to have a chance to talk cars for a few minutes.
Oh man, where do we begin? I got it like literally a few feet away from me. Out is my '66 Mustang.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but my grandfather gave me for my 16th birthday. 289, got the 2-barrel Carter on it. It's just a standard. You got the pony interior, nothing special. It's an automatic. But it was fast. Great car. I became an expert in the early 60s slab side Lincolns, the suicide door Lincolns. I restored a number of them. And flipped them.
I have to ask did you get into those Lincoln Continentals because of Kennedy, because of the Kennedy assassination?
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
I thought so.
They were beautiful cars. I was just like, this is the most amazing looking. It's so beautiful, this car. I was just like, I don't know. You see something when you're young, it becomes like this, almost like, wow, this thing is just, I have to, and they really were that beautiful. That was the height of just, that was Exner, I guess, was the, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I assume, or maybe not, but have you seen the Kennedy limousine?
In person?
Yes.
I've not. No, I've not seen it in person. I did buy.
It's at the Henry Ford Museum.
Yes. No. After I've actually got models of it right back. In fact, here you go.
Oh, look.
I've got this one now. This was the limousine before, and then they did what's called the if you can see, look back there, I guess right there, the Lyndon Johnson. This is how sick Lyndon Johnson was.
Yeah, they put it back in the
service. The same car.
I know.
And he rode around in it. I'm like, oh my, this man is sick.
Now wait just 1 second. I do have to correct that because that is incorrect information. President Johnson did put the limo back in service because after they upgraded it, obviously after Dallas, but he was spooked by that car and he very rarely rode in that car. There was another sort of copy of that limousine, the second car. That was his choice. It was identical to the main Lincoln from Dallas, but he really didn't want to ride in that car and very, very rarely did. So just
but nevertheless, you should take that thing and just retire it someplace, right?
Yeah, no, it should have been, well, first of all, it was a piece of evidence that they made sure they immediately took the windshield out that showed bullet holes in it. That was, and they were wiping away, like literally cleaning up the crime scene as though they were the mafia cleaners.
Mm-hmm.
In front of the press. They didn't care.
Right
they
there
buckets,
in Parkland Hospital.
Parkland.
We could go on for days about the Kennedy. But no, literally just, his brain, just slop it with a bucket, literally the gore was so horrible that flying back, and you probably saw that Paul Landis, this Secret Service agent, came out and said he's the one who had the magic bullet. Like, yeah, okay, all right, buddy, sure. I think he was one of the ones who flew back with the limousine, and the gore was so. One of the couple agents were throwing up in the C-130 where the limousine was when they flew it back because it was so you can imagine when blood and brain tissue start to dry up and the smell, and just, I'm sure it was awful. But I actually bought a 1965 Lehman Peterson custom, Lehman Peterson, the Heiss and Eisenhart made the Kennedy limousine, but Lehman Peterson made those stretch limos from the 60s, mid 60s Lincolns to about 69. Robert McNamara had one. What's his name? Robert, from Man from U.N.C.L.E. What's that actor's name? He had one, but it looked just like it was the only one they made that looked like the Kennedy limousine. They made it in 64, then 65, before the Lincoln switched over in body style, and 66 was a new style. It wasn't that same slab side. But I managed to find in Chicago in Santa Rosa, California, a 65 with the same color, midnight blue. I'll send you a picture of it if you want. It's a beautiful limousine. Lehman Peterson had the rear it wasn't like the Kennedy limousine. They had the seats, jump seats, you would face each other, and it had a little wooden console with a TV set in it and all this, and a divider. And I could tell you a story about driving that thing across country. It practically turned me into a cripple. It had a 25-gallon gas tank, and the guy who sold it to me apparently had the gas tank repaired, but it didn't repair it well enough to hold more than 10 gallons of gas. So the first thing I do, I get outside of town and I fill it with 25 gallons and proceed to watch 15 gallons of gas just spill out onto the pavement. I'm like, holy shit, we better get out of here. We're going to blow, we're going to have an inferno. So I had to drive this car getting 8 to 10 miles a gallon across the country, only filling up 10 gallons at a time. So, I mean, I literally, in a couple of cases, I remember in Oklahoma, coasting down the hill out of gas, like to into the gas station because I'd run out of gas before I could get to the next exit. And even worse, though, they didn't obviously make these for the driver's comfort, right? And in that year, 65, they made they had a what do you call it? Not telescoping, but the steering wheel could move up and down. One of the first motorized steering wheels, right? Well, unfortunately, in my case, this mechanism had either just failed or whatever. So the steering wheel had locked in a downward position. So it was like right between your legs, meaning like you had to sit like, and obviously they because of the divider and the way they set it up, you didn't have you couldn't recline. You were stuck. So I had to drive like this, like with the steering wheel between my legs upright. I had started having back spasms after the 1,000th mile. Having to stop every 50 miles to put, by the way, this was when gas was at almost over $4 a gallon. I think it was 2006. Remember, right after when the Iraq war, like that period where it's like, oh my God, everything was like heating oil was like $4.50 a gallon. But I love that car. I loved it. And I love those old Lincolns. I certainly know that motor, the 430, the old, I think they called the Marauder motor. It had some power. So if Bill Greer had wanted to gun it out of there with Kennedy before he got that headshot, he could have, and he didn't. He kept looking back to make sure the deed was done, right?
Yeah. So what do you think of what's going on with the automotive industry and the electrification of cars right now?
Oh, geez.
Because I see it as like massive government control. I see it as corporatocracy, corporate fascism, where the government they've captured the entire industry. So I'm very interested to get your views on that. I guess, you and I seem to be very much on the same page ideologically. I don't know if you describe yourself as a libertarian or a conservative, but either way, I think that we're on the same page.
Oh, I'm a libertarian conservative. I mean, I think that basically to me, like the individual liberty, it all comes down to the individual rights. That's what government exists to protect, nothing else. Otherwise, it's just a gang. It's literally just a bunch of thugs who've gotten together and created all this foo-fra to make you think that you have to obey what they say. Like I said, probably anarchist, really, when it comes down to it. Which is why you see, I think, in the left, the thuggery that goes on, because they all know.
We lost you again.
Violence in their stead. They can't make compelling arguments to force people into the things that they want. So, but as far as the industry goes, it's just, if you want to screw, as I've said before about anything, if you want to really screw something up good, get government involved in it, and whatever they might have in terms of, EVs, you question whether it's always going to be the best thing going, because, as soon as you get subsidies going, the agendas start to play into what goes on and what is being built. Like Stan Meyer, are you familiar with his story? Stanley Meyer, the water car.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you wonder, I mean, nobody's ever said that he was a fraud, and he had this car, he had figured out a way using the, the toroidal, sort of, basically fracturing the water. He said that, would immediately release the hydrogen. I don't know, whatever it was. He, things like that. Like, why did he get up in the middle of a dinner with someone he was meeting with, I think from and said, somebody's poisoned me, and dropped dead, and all his plans and everything had gone, I think there's technologies out there that are clearly being suppressed. Maybe not on the level of like running cars on water per se, but there's certainly advanced technologies where they can't meter it. What was it that not Westinghouse? Oh gosh, he told Tesla. Tesla said, well, we could have potentially free energy for everybody. He said, son, if I can't put a meter on it and charge people for it, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And the same thing with the oil flow. I think the ignorance surrounding EVs is unbelievable. Like as though, like this is a magic solution because it doesn't emit. Sure, it doesn't emit it out of the tailpipe. It emits it out of the coal factory that's used to power the electricity that charges it. And by the way, overwhelming the grid. If we even get anything close to what they want to bring online, it's lunacy. It's like they want to collapse our society and our civilization by this.
Yeah, well, I look back at what happened with Chrysler in like the 70s, and they were going bankrupt. They went to the government. They got a loan, right? And that was very controversial at the time.
Oh,
and that was only, what was that? How many million? It was in the millions of dollars.
Yeah, it was only
right?
tens of millions, maybe hundreds. Nothing close to what it is today. Like, remember cash for clunkers? That was the biggest destruction of valued meaning like crushing up perfectly good vehicles. Like, are these people insane?
Yeah,
it was just But go ahead.
And so today I see the complete transformation of the auto industry with these government grants and subsidies, like 10 billion here and 10 billion there and 20 billion there to build a battery plant, and it's out of control here in Canada and the U.S. in my view. What kind of impact do you think that will have, not just on the auto industry, but the economy in general and our society?
Unfortunately, it's going to have the same effect that every government giveaway or boondoggle does. It's going to inflate it's going to make everything's going to cost more, and there's going to be distortions in generally across the board. Well, for example, now used cars are. And believe me, I flipped a number of cars in my day. Not physically. I bought and in fact, when I was 16, I started buying and reselling auction police cars. I was a big Blues Brothers fan, so I thought that was so cool. So I started going to the auctions and buying like the Plymouth Grand Fury and the Dodge Diplomat and the old Chevy Caprice and.
Yeah, I've owned an old police car myself. Actually, and on occasion I'd get pulled over by the cops because they would think I would be impersonating a police officer.
Yeah. It's people still to this day they haven't produced a Crown Vic since I think 2011. They stopped making the Crown Vic, right? And I swear to God, people still, and I'm behind them. I have an old Denver City police car, a Crown Vic. They're not sure if it's not a cop car. Just it's always going to look like that to them. But I think you look at, like, for example, how used trucks in some cases. I remember a couple of years ago, they sold their 2-year-old truck for more than they bought it new. So this is like there's opportunities to be made, I guess. Ultimately there's niche markets where people can benefit from, but it hurts working people. If you need a truck, you're competing against, because for a while it was the lack of production, I guess, based on the microchips. There weren't new vehicles coming out, but then of course the Democrats get in power, they push us towards economical or fuel efficient vehicles, and now towards EVs, which are all of course personally invested in. We had this in Delaware. They brought this Fisker. They had a Fisker plant. They brought total boondoggle, just totally went bust. I think the state of Delaware invested upwards of $100 million. I'm like, where did that go? And they did the same thing actually with solar panels. Similarly, a company called I can't remember the name, but it was the same thing. It's just like all this taxpayer subsidies down the tubes, and it went somewhere. I guarantee the people who ran these companies and the people who invested in them initially did just great, But
so
then
you mentioned Fisker, and that is a company that just illustrates why, this whole electrification of the auto industry, in my view, is such a scam. The Fisker Karma, I think it was the first Fisker electric vehicle produced, right? And it was not successful, and they had all these bodies for Fisker Karmas that they couldn't sell because the company went bankrupt. So then it was the guy from Bob Lutz went and formed another company, bought up all the bodies, and then they put big block Chevys in them, right? And sold them as sort of like a high end.
Like a hot rod or something.
Yeah, right. And so they went to the Detroit Auto Show that year to promote these things, and you could buy these for like an exorbitant amount of money. So they took this electric car that was supposed to be green. It didn't work. It ended up being shuffled off into this other company where they put big block gas guzzling Chevy V8s into them with a lot a lot of power. It was just like the irony was just off the charts.
The throaty roar of a Detroit I mean,
and no doubt it was
it tells me that we're alive, that the world's good.
That's right.
Freedom exists when you hear that, exactly. Hear that Holly 4-barrel just, the growl. It's like the roar of freedom almost that hearing a good performance car. And then the EVs make no noise. It's like, oh my God, it's like awful. It's some sort of like, I don't know.
It's like the Flintstones mobile.
Not even. At least the Flintstones, that the sound of Fred, whatever it was. That noise. No, it's awful. I mean, it's
well, the charging network is still not up to snuff.
Oh.
Anytime I've had a test vehicle that's electric, which is every vehicle so far this year, when I have to drive back and forth to Toronto with it, it's just a challenge even just to find a charger that will work.
Yeah. Not to mention, people don't understand, these things wear down, your cell phone battery, your phone, cell phone battery, after 3 years, you're not getting 2 hours out of it. You're not.
Oh my God. Talking about the batteries, they're so heavy. I had a Kia EV6. That thing, it's an SUV, a super SUV. It's as fast as a Lamborghini, but it weighs more than a 57 Cadillac.
Damn. Wow. Which is
that's huge. That's a huge car.
Yeah. Not the Eldorado, the Barrett's, the one with the stainless steel top or the brushed stainless hood or roof. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about? The Cadillac that had that is one of the most beautiful cars. If I could ever have a car, that would be the one. I think it's the 58.
I'm just
Cadillac
I'm waiting for them to bring back fins.
Yes. Yeah. I've always wondered. I wonder if they were produced. I guess they can't on some level because of safety considerations. But why not remake the Mustang as it looked in 1968 in the Bullet, movie? Exactly that look. Not, and that's that would be.
That's a real car. You know what? I have a funny story that you guys are going to love, especially you, Tyler, about electric cars and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Hopefully he won't mind me telling this story, but rewind back to 2008 and they were starting to roll out some electric cars, and I don't recall what make and model it was, but he bought one, right? Because he's a big environmentalist. It was the green thing to do, and all the trendy, hip, liberal people were running out to buy an electric car. And I called him one day on the phone, and I'm like, so what are you doing? And I could tell he was outdoors. It was windy, and he's talking to the phone. He's like, I'm stranded. I just bought this electric car.
Was it that one that looked like? Was it that one that looked like the Lake Car?
Yes, I think it was something like that, like the Lake Car.
Yeah,
and he was totally stranded. And in a candid moment there, he was like, I hate this damn thing. I just bought it and I wish I could get rid of it, but it's the trendy car and I'm an environmentalist and this is what I'm supposed to be driving. But the damn thing was always, breaking down. There was no place to charge it. And so you might have noticed in more recent videos when you see Bobby, he's not driving a trendy little electric car. He's got an old van that looks like it's been to hell and back that he, carts the dogs around in.
That's cool.
So maybe he's learned the lesson the hard way.
People who are intelligent catch on eventually. I think that it takes a real narrow mind to think that just the basic concept of an electric car would ever pass muster in this country, or the way we use vehicles. Not to mention the entire. Look, there's this company called Nikola they're trying to make EV trucks, which actually would make more sense than for not residential, but whatever you call it, for passenger cars, because they could set up an infrastructure, and they have constant routes to ship goods across the country, similar to trains, I guess, but the idea that an EV, though, I mean, what was the senator from, the secretary of not transportation, Stabenow, was it? No, Debbie, whoever it was, that Michigan governor, she tried to, they said, they tried to do, was it? No, Grisham.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer is it?
No.
Jennifer Grisham.
Whatever it was, I think she tried to do like this, either one of those women Democrat politicians up there tried to do a demonstration of like taking an electric car. And they had to they were sending their aides ahead to literally lock up the charging stations. And people were like, what are you doing? You can't just stand here and hold this. We need to charge our car. And because she kept running, it wasn't going. It was like, it was a total debacle. It proved exactly what she didn't want to prove, which is these things are not, you can't just take a little, ride across the country in them without risking being totally stranded somewhere. And you can't bring you can't give a gallon of electrons out, and dump it in the tank. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and not to mention also the hazards. I mean, one of these catches fire, a combustion engine vehicle catches fire, it's going to be burned up within probably a half an hour at most. I mean, residually, these through lithium ions, they could burn for days and they become hazardous. The hazardous waste release is unbelievable.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they have to
you'd think Ralph Nader would be raising hell about that. Why isn't Ralph Nader raising
He's still
hell
chasing the
about
Corvair. I just saw a Corvair the other day, actually.
Wow.
Really nice.
Some
condition.
of them are still rolling, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Unsafe at any speed. Thanks, Ralph.
Yes, thanks, Ralph. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that Ralph is suffering a bad case of Trump derangement syndrome in recent years.
He had it before it was even a thing, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. He has. It's kind of sad to see that. I know that we're running out of time, but before we go, I just have to show folks some great pictures that you sent me. You were kind enough to open up your photo albums to me and show me some amazing pictures that you've collected through the years of some of the interesting people that you've met in your many years in law and in politics. And it just absolutely blew my mind. And I think Rick's got them queued up on his side so we can share these pictures with our viewers. But I was wondering if you could, hey, look who's there.
And if you look behind Tucker in that picture, he's got a picture of him when he was, I think, 16 or 17 with Jerry Garcia.
I saw that. I know he was a deadhead, right? Big time deadhead. Yeah.
I got Tucker a ticket to his first. He told me his first concert was in not Oakland. It was maybe the Kaiser Convention Center. It was New Year's of '84, I think.
Wow.
One of the 12/28/84, December 20th, and I got him a ticket. It wasn't his ticket, but they have people sell the old ticket stubs, and I got it for him. Like I said, I got the ticket to your first show, and he framed it. He framed it and put it. It's on his office wall. So
that is so cool.
That's where I first met him in person. Actually, it was at a Dark Star Orchestra show.
Is that right?
In DC, yeah, at the 930 Club.
That's awesome.
Oh, there he is. Ma, hey buddy, ma. That's Beau Biden.
That is Beau Biden.
They always call everybody buddy. Hey buddy, ma. And I say ma. It's like almost like the penguin. They would have this sort of way about them. Their father, he kind of looks like the penguin, from the Batman.
He kind of does.
It's that grit. It's that, or actually maybe more like the Joker, but like some kind of that grin. My father, we purchased. My parents purchased the lot next to his original house on Centerville Road, across from St. Joe's, and it was just an empty lot, and they were going to build a house there. And he came over when they were walking the property one day and started, through the fence, started talking about, you're not going to this and you're not going to. And my father he took no shit from anybody. He was like, listen, and he said, listen, chicklets. My father was a cosmetic dentist and an endodontist, and was one of the developers of porcelain veneers. And he just told Biden down. I mean, he's just like, look, chicklets, because his teeth were like chiclets. I mean, they're literally these cheap caps he had on back in the day. Now, of course, Hunter's teeth look like they're made of pearls or Really.
And speaking of Hunter, there is John Paul McIsaac. Yeah.
Just the first time I ever met him, like you'd think, according to Keith Morris or Kevin Morris, excuse me, this is a Biden sugar bro, Hunter Biden sugar bro. The guy's like bankrolling him, who was behind what was it, South Park. He's like a screenwriter, I guess, an attorney out in California. He's the one that put up the $2 million to pay Hunter's tax bill. He floated this sort of what Roger called a Unabomber style mind map, that said that this guy Keith Ablow, who was a psychiatrist briefly for Hunter Biden, and Hunter left a laptop apparently at his office, that somehow that got to Roger and then got to me and then got to John Paul McIsaac. I'm like, these people are like literally, I mean, it's you realize the delusion when they create a fantasy and you're a player in it. I'm like, what? I'm like, are you out of your mind? I've never, it was just, but he's a good man. He's a very courageous man too, and had his business destroyed.
That is a true whistleblower. Yeah. John Paul McIsaac. Hey, there's RFK's campaign manager.
Good man. Let me tell you something story about Dennis Kucinich. First of all, I always liked him when he was running for president. I thought he was the only truth teller and the only really honest and who represented what I believe is like ethical politics. But this is a cryptocurrency. One of the few
Democrats, yes, that I respect.
Yeah, exactly. And here's to show you how truly, in a sense, not a party creature or a partisan zealot he is. This is at a cryptocurrency conference in 2017 in Aspen, and which had Patrick Byrne, Ron Paul, Jesse Ventura, and I introduced myself to. I said, I've always been a fan of yours. I'm Republican, work for Ron Paul, but I said I'm Roger Stone's attorney. He said he immediately got this like real like sudden serious expression. Now, time frame, you got to think September 2017. Trump had just got elected. He says, I need to talk to you. He said, I need to talk to Roger. And he kept and he was very serious about it. And eventually I couldn't get them connected directly. I gave him the numbers, but Roger was at some thing where he couldn't tear away. And finally we ended up having dinner together at the Brown Hotel, whatever. There's a hotel that's here in Denver. Anyway, with Jesse and Dennis, and he said they're going to try to create a perjury trap for Roger. He said this is right before Roger was testifying to the Intelligence Committee, and Dennis warned him. He said, "Don't." He said, "You got to warn him." He said they're going to set him up for and that's exactly what they did.
That is exactly what they did.
I swear to God.
The WikiLeaks.
Dennis tried to head it off. He tried to stop it, and I said, Roger, you should be, that you got to give it to Dennis Kucinich. He is a genuinely good man of integrity. He tried to warn you that they were going to, set you up to trip you up, and we're going to create this perjury trap. And he, this is like 3 weeks before he testified, and Dennis gave me little cards right here somewhere from his original run. They were like kind of like baseball cards that he was very proud of that I kept. I need to hook up with him if I can in Philadelphia. I don't have any way to get in touch with him. I don't know if you have any contact for him.
Yeah,
but that'd be great.
I can hook you up. And I'm sure, of course, Dennis will be there. What you just said, that story you just told about Dennis's integrity, that's exactly why Bobby has chosen him to manage his campaign.
Yeah,
there aren't too many that Bobby can really trust, and he knows he can really trust Dennis Kucinich.
It really shows, yeah. Yeah, he and Mike Gravel was a good man, too, I felt like.
I miss Mike Gravel. One of the good guys. Yeah, and speaking of good guys, there you are with Alex Jones and the Beast.
Oh my gosh, that was on
95
South, or maybe it was a highway headed towards where they held the CPAC conference down there on the harbor, and everything was shut down because Pence came in. So when the motorcade or whatever, it just all traffic comes to a halt, as people in Delaware have come to find these last 3 years. So we were just parked on route, I think it was 295 South or one of those, or no, maybe it was Route 29, whatever it was.
Wow.
And so we just got out and started taking pictures, and the Beast for sure.
Yeah, he does. Alex drives like a demon. Have you ever ridden with Alex Jones?
Oh yeah, yes.
He's a madman.
He had a Dodge Charger, I think, when we
That's
went
right. Yeah.
The range.
Yes.
We went shooting with him. That's Governor Pete DuPont. I summer interned in his law firm. Also a very good man of integrity. Really a good man. Yeah, he ran for president in '88.
I remember.
Oh, there's the man. There's my favorite musician of all time.
And Phil Lesh, yeah.
Phil Lesh, Grateful Dead
Phil
bass
Lesh.
player. What a good man. I love that man. I really do.
Yeah.
He's still playing to this day.
My goodness, there you are with Robin Williams.
I was a day player in Dead Poets Society, which was
I
filmed in
thought
Middletown,
that was
Delaware.
from Dead Poets Society. That's
made
one of my favorite movies.
Made quite a bit of money on that, actually, because Peter Weir picked me up for a line because I happened to be sitting there and really pissed off all the people who were the agents who were trying to get their clients who were actors to get, if you speak even a word on film being filmed in a SAG production, you're immediately a provisional member of SAG. You're separated from the extras. You begin making, instead of like $50 a day, you make $50 an hour. So this is 1987, late 87. Right. I think I made $25,000 for like 3 days of hanging out with Robin Williams.
And you probably spoke one line or one word.
I did. It was I still have the paper called the Welton Honor, the actual paper. And he said it was where they put an article in the paper, Welton needs women, it was supposed to be. And and it was the scene where there was this big dust up in the assembly. And I said, I'm not going to sit in the auditorium waiting to be called in with I went in and started watching, the only one in the chapel, watching Weir film the individual close-up scenes. And so he walks down the aisle, he's, you come here. And he just like, me, I'm not anybody. I kind of tricked my way into being even an extra. I wasn't chosen when they came around, and I just went with a friend, and suddenly they're like, oh, here, you get fitted up, get a flat top or whatever, get a haircut. So he says, read this line. And I read the line out of the paper. It was cut out of the movie. It was on the cutting room floor. But immediately like, okay, well, here you go. And I went from like I said, $50 a day to making like $1,000 for that day. It was insane.
That's Hollywood money.
I still get residuals.
Captain.
Yeah, I still get residuals. It's crazy. He was amazing.
Now I'm going to look for you. Next time I watch Dead Poets Society, I'm going to be looking for you.
I can tell you where to find me.
Yeah, you got to tell me which scene you're in. Was it Arnold, right?
Arnold and Newt. When I was working for Newt, Arnold came in. This is early 95 after he became speaker. I worked for Newt when he was Republican whip. So he was just like a firebrand and suddenly became speaker. It was crazy. Like overnight, we were like all access, if you want to talk like backstage passes to the Capitol. I mean, I could go into and sit in the speaker's chair if I wanted. And they didn't say a word. The Capitol Police, if you had the Gingrich ID, identified.
That was probably your first taste of real power, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was. Yeah. It was interesting.
My buddy Dan Aykroyd.
Yep,
and Donna,
one of my favorites of all time. This was the release of Driving Miss Daisy, which for some reason occurred in Washington at the National Theater. They decided to do the premiere there, and I was such a Blues Brothers fan, such a John Belushi fan, and I loved it. And so they had this big reception at the Willard afterwards, but you had to pay and I'm a freshman at Georgetown. You had to pay $250 for this, right? Well, I said, Stephanie, to my sister, who was at Trinity at college, I said, we can't, let's just go to the premiere. I can afford the $50 for that. So we went, and I said, well, maybe I can meet him in the hallway, like in the theater. So I go downstairs to try to catch him before he leaves. He turns out he was upstairs where we were, and she's out in the hallway. He comes out, comes right up to her. You can see that's her in the picture, and says, she's like, oh my God, my brother wants to meet you so badly. And he said, oh, and they waited for a couple minutes. And then finally he says, well, here, let me sign something to him. Signs a card to me. He says, we'll see you at the Willard. And when she handed it to me, I was like, this is great, Stephanie. I turned it over. It was his ticket to the reception at the Willard. Oh, wow. $250 a person. They let us right in. So we partied with him, with Morgan Freeman, and he did the whole Blues Brothers. He got up on stage and, sang songs
did Elwood.
Harmonica. He did. Yeah. He was
dressed
like Elwood. It was, I'm still
great.
Get tingles from that night.
I do. I got a little goosebumps myself.
Oh, there he is. Oh boy.
Wow. Joe Biden himself.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And who's the lady
that's
beside
That's
him?
my mom. That's my mother.
That's your mother. Oh, wow.
Yeah. She'll be up there Monday with me. I'm going to try to, I got to email them, the campaign somehow to, because she's got a bad knee and she's 80 and I don't want her waiting and standing in line. So I'm trying to see if they can get a chair or something or somewhere she can be accommodated. This is a great man. This is Father Robert Spitzer, my freshman intro to philosophy professor at Georgetown. He became the president of the Gonzaga College, is a true genius. This man was a tempest of wisdom and just he was so passionate. He made me like one of those teachers that gives you a love for a subject, philosophy. And he actually has videos out. Like there's a whole foundation built around him. He's written several books. One is, right here, Spitzer. Is it? They're on faith, but his knowledge of philosophy and proofs of an absolute being or God, the proof of God, the existence of God, were like unassailable. But I mean, he taught everything from like about cosmology, not cosmetology, cosmology, and I mean every aspect of philosophical thought you can think of. And he was so passionate and just great man, a good man. That's actually where
influence.
Another good
Gary
man.
Johnson,
Yeah,
Libertarian candidate for president in 2012 and 2016.
That was
the only Libertarian presidential candidate that I did not vote for in 2016. I voted for Trump. I like Gary, but he was a terrible.
Gary's
candidate.
a good man. He just didn't have what it took, Yeah, I mean, the what
nice
was it?
Guy,
There's another. That was when I was running for state senate, and Bo was running for his first run for attorney general. That was at a union event on a Saturday morning. He was kind of surprised to see me there because I was like, "Why would I not come to union events? These are voters."
Bo Biden and Morgan Freeman. There's another good man right there.
Good man.
Also suffering Trump derangement syndrome, though. I hear.
Is he really?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Who's that in the background in the middle of the shot?
It might be Chevy Chase. I'm not sure though.
No, it looks like Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
If you zoom in, you might be able to make like doing an original. What do they call it? Photo bomb?
It does. He's photo bombing you. That sounds like something Chevy would do.
Yeah. Oh, that was when I ran for state rep and just a local broadcast we did. That's my dad when I got sworn into the California bar.
Awesome.
This was one of my first visits to Capitol Hill. That's Venus Flytrap.
It is from WKRP.
So I used to dress when I was 13 or 12 at the time, actually, 1984, when I got the political bug bit. And I said, "Mom, I'm going on the train to Washington." She said, "What are you talking about? You're 12 years old." I said, "Well, you can either let me go or I'm going." And I would take the train to the Amtrak down to the Hill and would spend the entire day from maybe 8 a.m. all day just roaming the Capitol. And I've been to places that you can't go anymore. I mean, because I was, and I dressed like a page, so they wouldn't think. I mean, look at me, I'm a little kid. They wouldn't think of anything back then. I could go anywhere. I walked onto the floor of the Senate many times. I remember meeting Metzenbaum and Kennedy and Biden would be there, and also, but I would park myself in Bill Roth's office, Senator Bill Roth, in the Hart Building, and go through the tunnels. And in this case, it happened to be he was testifying on drug abuse. It was June, I think, 30, 1984. And that's next to him is Katie Roth. That's Senator Bill Roth, the Roth IRA. That's Bill Roth. That's his daughter next to wearing those that 1984 era clothing. I mean, if you've ever seen it, the teased up hair and and she sadly passed away of cancer prematurely. Katie did. Yeah, his son Bud is has worked at the SEC. I think he might be still there. Good man. Also, he clerked on the Delaware Chancery Court when I was also a clerk there. Unlike totally different from the Biden, trajectory, the Biden children and their trajectory. But those were the days. I'm telling you, that was like, there he is, Jim Fetzer.
That's Jim Fetzer. Yeah.
I hope I thought I found my Jim Mars picture in there. Maybe concluded.
I didn't see Jim Mars.
No, I think that was that last batch I didn't get to, but that's Thomas Massey.
I love Massey.
Yeah, good man.
Love him. Makes me want to move to Kentucky so I could have Massey and Senator Ball representing.
There is the Godfather right there.
Man.
This man is. I was able to interview him back in 2007 on when I was on radio and organizing his effort in Delaware. He is just. I mean, I love this man. He's like with Phil Lesh, one of the greats of all time for what he does. In front of the Berlin Wall in 1991, I guess it would be.
Yeah. Was that as it was coming down?
Yeah, it was already, the wall technically had come down, but it was still standing. So it was like there were huge
portions
sections of it. Yeah. And those were cool areas where there was still graffiti, because that was kind of almost like an artistic thing. That's Donna Jean Gottschall of the Grateful Dead, whose son formed a band that I helped him found and manage. She sang with Elvis, the Muscle Shoals community. If there's a great documentary on that, that is us delivering the petitions to the Denver city government for the social use cannabis social use initiative that we with the law firm I was working for got on the ballot and passed. But of course they thwarted it. But from the liquor, it was just it never really got off the ground, even though we did pass it by referendum. That's returned.
Yikes!
Just elected vice president. And that's my mom again. That's of course Jill.
This must be so surreal for you.
Oh yeah.
To be battling the Bidens in court. There's
real horrifying.
Diamond and Silk. It
Diamond
must
and
be.
Silk, yes.
It must be so strange for you, Tyler.
It is really strange at times. Yeah, it's just it's odd.
I can't even
it's just
imagine.
like my whole life is blown up into this when I grew up. I hate to say it, it's like the world, the nation, at least living with just the disgust and that this president is so odd. As senator, I mean, we had to live with him for 36 years as senator.
As your senator,
he went from being, I think, originally he was an arrogant, angry, but very quick and clever in some ways guy, to when he had the aneurysm. It went to more becoming like what's the word, eccentric, almost like, and then now it's senility, but none of it good.
None of it good. And I wanted to ask you this. I hope we're not keeping you too late, but I'm just
actually,
I'm
and guys, I do have to jump off, so I'm going to let you guys wrap up.
Oh,
but
all
Rick,
right.
thank you for hanging. I know I'm very long-winded sometimes.
We are over time. I understand.
Very patient.
Yeah, and it's been great to meet you, and hopefully
Likewise.
we can do a follow-up at some point and get you back on the show again.
Absolutely,
Thank you very
I'd love
much,
to.
Tyler.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, take it away, Lori.
Good night. So I wanted to ask you, Tyler, speaking of things that are awkward and weird right now, like what isn't, but I presume that you were a Trump guy, Trump supporter, and now that Bobby Kennedy's in the race, are you kind of wrestling with that? Do you know who you're going to support next year? Are you still trying to make up your mind?
Well, I mean, I support both to as far as they can go. So if it came down to Kennedy versus Trump, oof, wow.
That's a tough one.
I still, oh my gosh, wow. Whatever the case, I almost feel like if I think Trump has to be elected because of what they tried to do to him. For them they can't get away with what they've done or are trying to do to him, because that sets a standard or sets a new precedent in this country. That's like we have to show them that you're not going to be the one who decides who we get to elect as president. And I think that Trump would, if he's smart and he doesn't make all these errors that he made in his first term, would make Bobby Kennedy Secretary of State or Attorney General. Would give him a very prominent position. But I mean, I said that if it was Trump and Kennedy at the top, this country could not lose either way. And I think Bobby
would be unstoppable.
Or just even if they were head to head, I mean, the country could not lose. Really, I mean, it would be like a dream. It would be going from the worst, what do they call it, the best of two evils, or what do they call it? How do they phrase that? Jerry Garcia once said, "Voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil."
It's still evil.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Instead of the lesser of two evils, I think if we had Trump versus Kennedy, we'd have like the greater of two goods, really, in the end.
Rick and I were talking about that recently, and I'm sorry he's not here for this part. But we were talking about, when Bobby was seeking the Democratic nomination, as if he had a chance in hell of getting it. But if by some miracle he was the Democratic nominee and Trump was the Republican nominee in the general election, that I predicted that it would be an election, probably one like we haven't seen since the election of 1960. Kennedy versus Nixon, and probably as close as that election. And
probably not as contentious, though. I mean, I think it would be,
I wonder.
I think it would almost be like a consensus election. It would be like, how can we work with each other? You'd see the first, I'm trying to think of an election prior to that where I guess there was almost like they were more aligned with each other. It was almost like, it would almost be like the loser of the race should become vice president. You know what I mean? Like that's almost a scenario where that would be
Very
great. If you
rare
could
in
have,
American history that we would ever even have a scenario like that, right?
I guess you have to run with a vice presidential candidate. What would be cool is if
Mm.
like they, this is fantasy stuff, but if they said, if Trump is vice presidential candidate and Kennedy's, that someone would run with them as vice president who'd be willing to resign, and then the other parties, losing would be appointed as vice president. Like, you know what I mean? Wouldn't that be cool? Like, in other words, it'd be Kennedy, Trump, or Trump, Kennedy.
If it was a Kennedy Trump ticket, they would be each other's assassination insurance, would they
Oh,
not?
of course. Well, I mean, they don't even, it's like you have to really be just amongst the evil to even think this way. But I'm going to tell you what, what sold me on Bobby Kennedy was not even this. I mean, like, again, what salvaged him in the sense, like, I mean, he was very, sort of doctrinaire left wing, I guess you could say, with a lot of the issues. I mean, things he had said, he made some very, caustic statements about Republicans and people who don't buy onto the climate change stuff, and I didn't hold that against him because I thought, he was thoughtful and well thought out. But what absolutely turned me around him was that his recitation, or his description of how his father was assassinated and what happened there is 100% correct as far as I'm concerned. I was like, this man's telling the truth. He's not going to hide behind whatever have you, cower behind, well, just don't do it to us. We get the message. In other words, like these other Kennedys and this, what is it? Jack Schlossberg or whatever, the grandson of JFK.
Unfortunately, he's JFK's grandson.
Disgusts me. I'm like, Caroline, that is sad. Get your son under control, because Bobby Kennedy is, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to think that we even have someone that potentially could be president of his caliber. This man is, I mean, I'm sorry, but he blew Trump away. I mean, in terms of, if you were to just say in terms of the knowledge, the historical, the thought, and I would have to choose Kennedy. I mean, I really would. And much as I love Trump and what he's done and what he's represented in terms of being like a battering ram against the establishment, everything. What I fear about Bobby getting elected is that, look, you're going to have a bunch of the Democrats, same so-and-sos just rush right in, and he's got to he's got to create a government. He's really going to go hammer and tong and get rid of these bad people? Because a lot of people are sort of like, they're all bored with the Biden stuff and all this other stuff. They're Trump deranged who would be natural picks. So it's like, yeah, I know he might pick good people like a Kucinich at the first tier, but beneath that, is there really going to be reform, or are they just going to do what they did with his uncle, frankly, and they did with Richard Nixon, which is just, once you get past a certain level of bureaucracy, it's ossified. You're not going to dislodge these people. They're going to do what they want. They're going to continue the evil and the corruption, no matter who the
It's not
president is.
easy to drain the swamp, right? Donald Trump sure as hell found that out.
No,
and Trump talked a lot about draining the swamp. I believe that Bobby Kennedy actually would drain the swamp.
Well, he's got the intelligence, and he knows, he's an attorney. Yeah. That's the thing, is like, he has fought these battles. And that's the thing. I mean, he knows the tricks. He knows where the statutes, the regulations, like, he gets into the grid of it where,
right.
It's one thing to go in and try to just, firebomb the thing, and get rid of everybody or kind of thing. That never works. But I think Kennedy would know how to do it in very, very clever and logical, as well as litigious ways that they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't realize what it's coming at them, because he would make it, basically almost like ironclad or watertight, I guess you could say. And that would be the advantage of Bobby Kennedy for sure.
And another advantage, at least I consider it an advantage, is like his Uncle Jack, I think he would have a very bipartisan cabinet. I think there would be a lot of Republicans serving in his cabinet. He has a lot of Republican friends. What some people might not know about Bobby is that, as much as he's always had, I mean, he's got good leftist credentials, but he's also always had a conservative streak. He kind of admired Senator Barry Goldwater. He wrote the introduction to a Goldwater reprint book several years ago. And he's always, he's friendly with the Reagans. The Kennedys have always had friends across the aisle. Bobby, was a regular guest on Fox News for 20 years, still is. He's got a lot of friends on the right. And, that's what we need.
That's all you can say. He's a class act. He's not a zealot. He's not dogmatic about anything. He's willing to change. I mean, I like, again, we've never had a more nimble, to have this man running for president is a blessing, because I always said,
It
God,
is.
I wish he would run, because of all the Kennedys, he's the only one worth a damn anymore. I'm sorry to say,
Sad
his
but
family,
true.
not, I mean, that have been public and have run for office. I'm sure his kids, he's probably got some really good kids. I don't know anything about them, but I mean, you look like a Joe Kennedy and Ted Kennedy. It's like, oof, boy, they really, I mean, they really did get rid of the good ones, huh?
And
But
Patrick,
Bobby's the only
remember
one.
Patrick? He was a
Oh
joke.
yeah, of course. Oh God. I mean, talk about like, just come on, guy. You're,
Right?
you're a dry drunk, and now you're going to be Mr. Anti-Marijuana. Please just go
Yeah.
at, just, sail off into the sunset and just leave well enough alone.
And the
that
American
being said,
voters had their say and got rid of him. They just
and
they
the
didn't
fact
connect with people.
he's his father's namesake. I mean, again, like there's no other, and he's direct. He's his son. I mean, it's not like, he's the grandnephew of, even John F. Kennedy's grandson doesn't even bear his name. So
Right.
it's just, to me, it's like kismet almost, that if he were to be elected, it would be like, wow, we can actually maybe, like, after all the horrors we've gone through since the assassination, and where the country's gone, that his election or his coming to power and being able to do the right things, and he's, I think he's smart enough not to be daring fate. I think I've heard him say the other day, yeah, I'm aware of the threats to me, and I'm not taking any chance. I'm not being stupid about it. I mean, I think John and Jack and Bobby were a little bit, sort of fatalistic. Fearless, but almost like, dude, you got to realize I mean, I guess
Maybe
it wasn't
even cavalier.
Cavalier. That's what it was. They weren't, and I mean, JFK was fatalistic probably because of his maladies. He figured, well, I'm not long to live anyway. I might as well just live to the fullest, and God bless him for that. But, and I think Bobby could have been a little more, after his brother shot, circumspect about, waiting in the crowds and just not having no, like, organized security. I mean, Rayford Johnson, nice guy, but I mean, that's not security. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
but nobody thought about this kind of stuff back then. But I mean,
That's true.
Before JFK, it was all up close shootings. So I don't know. I guess, his mind wasn't there. And in terms of like thinking, oh, they're going to kill me like that. And if they do,
He knew.
But
He knew. He threw caution to the four winds, Bobby Kennedy, on that 68 campaign. You've seen the footage of him going into huge crowds in an open car, right? He's standing.
There was so much love. I guess he just
trunk or in
didn't
the
think,
backseat.
absolutely.
He trusted the
like,
people.
Yeah.
He was like, I know that the people are not going to hurt me.
I'll show you. We can go on, but I want to show you this.
What's
okay, it's upside. People say, why is this upside down? Well, I bought this from, it was an estate sale, or it must have been part of an estate in Washington. This is obviously, Bobby Kennedy for president, a button. This is a bumper sticker, but if you flip it over, I don't know if you can even see it. Let me see.
It's a little bit of glare, but
okay. Let's see.
Back it up.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. Let's see. Let me see if I can turn this away, this light a little bit.
I love it. I'm a collector of memorabilia too, so I'm fascinated by that.
Let's see.
What am I looking for? Oh, is it signed? It's got
signed.
Writing on it.
Yeah. Yep. It sure is.
Signed by Bobby Kennedy. Looky there.
Gosh. Wait.
I can almost see it with the light.
Let's
wow.
See, let me turn it towards. Let me bring the light back up again. See. Okay. Turn it away. It's right.
I can kind of make out the signature.
So it says. I'll just read it because I don't. Yeah, it's probably too hard. It's faint, but it says.
Wow.
It says. Sorry. For Kelly, we need you right now, and it's Robert Kennedy. You can tell he just quick signed it. But here's the thing about it, is that the Union label on this, or the label on this bumper sticker, is L.A., California.
Oh my goodness.
So this could be one of the last things he ever signed.
I think it probably was.
It probably was. Yeah. I mean, it's a beat up bumper sticker. We need you right now. I mean, and that's exactly what he was saying. It's clear. It is no question the authenticity of it. I mean,
oh my
this
goodness.
has been in someone's collection, and I got it. So
Woo,
it's hanging.
Man, I just got a shiver down my spine when you told me that.
I mean, literally, he could have signed it. He could have signed it on the way to being, like right after his speech. But the fact that it's California, he only spent, they back then they would have made the stickers locally. So there's no question. It's not like, oh, this was at an event somewhere else. That had to be right at the primary. So,
and he was only there for a couple of days campaigning around California before the election. Wow.
Yeah.
It's an awkward transition to go from Bobby Kennedy's current campaign to assassinations. But since we're talking about it, of course, the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination is coming up next month. And I was just curious because I know you're a big assassination historian and researcher like me. We share that passion, and I was wondering what your plans are this year. Are you going to a conference, or what are you doing this year?
Yes. In fact, I'll be this year. I'm bringing my mother and brother with me. My mother's attended 2 previous conferences. She always has a ball. Really great lady. I'd love for you to meet her, Laurie.
I'd love to meet your mom. She sounds really cool.
She really is. And Dallas, they do the conference. They do a couple conferences. Yep. Cyril Wecht is actually putting on a conference through Duquesne University. Cyril, the great forensic pathologist, but he's doing it in Pittsburgh. So, and he's got, I think, Alec Baldwin coming in as a guest, and like, okay, Cyril, that's fine. That's whatever. I'm not a fan of Alec Baldwin. Let's just say.
Interesting.
I don't know who would be at this point, but that being said,
my friend Jim DiEugenio is going to be there. He'll be speaking this year at Duquesne.
He's going to be Cyril's conference, right?
Yeah, that's Cyril's conference.
Yeah, the one I'm going to is sort of it's put on by David Denton. Judith Baker's involved. Of course, people question whether she's for real. I've talked to her so much.
Nice lady.
Such length.
Friend of mine.
She's So you know the deal, because there are certain people who deny that she's for real. I mean, I think James Files might be. That's questionable. You know what I'm saying? But I think Judith has to be. She is a savant. I mean, her memory. She has an eidetic memory, from what I understand. Is what she told me. But she recalls things. She will say, "Lee and I were at this." And it's like either she is just the most amazing con woman that ever lived, who can literally just create stories on the spot with detail down to or she is the real deal. And I believe she was the real deal. I mean, I don't see why would someone come out
fascinating
and ruin their lives practically and alienate their family, but she carried
and had to flee the country. She had to leave
Lee
the
Oswald
because...
being set up. I mean, and Jim Garrison nailed it. He said, he's probably a loyal Marine and thought he was trying to save the president, and they set him up and murdered him,
That's what I've always thought.
One of the great, I said, just there were 2 great injustices that day. Obviously, the killing of the president and what they did to Oswald and have done since.
Right. That's right.
But I'll be in Dallas. So how about you? What are you going to do?
I'm thinking about going to Dallas. In recent years, I haven't gone to the conferences in Dallas because of what I call the QAnon invasion.
Oh, I heard about that. I didn't see any
down there in such huge numbers now and invading our conferences.
That would be a recent thing, because I think the last one I went to was 2019.
That was about the time it started in 2021. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was this kind of QAnon sect. That
they thought that JFK Jr. was
still alive. Yes. God, and they thought that President Kennedy was still alive.
What the hell?
Like he survived the head wound in Dallas, and that he was going to show up at age 105.
Like National Enquirer, level.
It's insane. And they came to Dallas, and they got a hotel room up there in the Reunion Tower Hotel, the big one that overlooks Dealey Plaza. And they would come down to Dealey Plaza every day for 3 months, Tyler. And they would sit there and chant and sing "We Are the World" and do all this crazy stuff. And they were waiting for John F. Kennedy to appear. And they were, grifting off of it too. A lot of people were sending them donations.
It's awful. It is awful to see that sort of manipulation of people, because there are genuine people there. I think there are genuine people in that who unfortunately are, they've got, maybe their psyches are a little bit, not so strong, who are sucked into this and become obsessed with it. And And I think there's mind control tactics involved there. I think Q is some sort of intelligence operation.
I do too.
With maybe some white hats and black hats involved one way or the other. But either way, it's just like I'm like, no, I'm done. It was so like, trust the plan, all this cryptic crap. I'm like, this is a fantasy. You people you don't be duped by this, please. I mean, the plan is you getting your ass off your frigging chair and going out and getting in the streets and talking to people and your neighbors, whoever. And it's, grassroots action, not waiting for some mysterious, I mean, the stuff they came up with though, it's like, I mean, it's not surprising that it eventually sort of, this is why I think it's intelligence, driven, is because it somehow sort of like arced over into JFK. You know what I mean? Where, of course, we saw intelligence, as Cass Sunstein said, spreading disinformation. We have to go in and these conspiracy theory whatevers and spread disinformation, not just refute. He said we have to go in. So that's where you get things like Jackie shot Kennedy or Bill Greer, the driver, shot Kennedy. Like, what are you people?
There's so many of them.
Yeah, ridiculous. I mean, just facially absurd.
It's disinformation. They're false sponsors.
Well, it's meant to make us all look like kooks if we dare question. You're just all crazy. You're all conspiracy. No, and that's and let's face it, the evidence is so strong and frankly and obvious. I mean, you have to think, how could you not think it was Lyndon Johnson? I mean, just the fact of Lyndon Johnson invites Kennedy to Texas, Lyndon goes home president, and JFK goes back in a body bag. I mean, like, what more do you need to know? I mean, honestly.
Oh, my friend, we're going to have that debate sometime, because one of the few things I disagree with you and Roger Stone on is the LBJ angle. I actually believe.
Have you read
that
Phil
LBJ
Nelson's books at all?
I have.
Okay.
I was not convinced.
But let me say this. Roger makes this point as well. Because we say LBJ was the center of it, doesn't mean it excludes other actors. He was working with it required a green light from Johnson. There's no way the CIA would have murdered the president if the vice president wasn't on board. And I agree with Ed Tatro on that front.
I totally disagree.
I don't think that Johnson planned it. I think maybe he had Ed Clark and he had Malcolm Wallace on scene. In other words, everybody had to have skin in the game. The mafia had to have people in there. So it was like this whole witch's brew. Everybody had to like put skin in the game. And I think Johnson had to put his skin in the game. But I think the CIA ran it clearly. I mean, it was a CIA operation. There's no question.
Yeah, my feeling on it is this, like we were talking about false sponsors. The CIA, in fact, most of the so-called conspiracy theories out there about Kennedy, the mob did it, Castro did it, the Russians did it, the KGB did it, Johnson did it. These are all, in my mind, false sponsors to keep you distracted and looking over here instead of looking at the CIA. And the CIA did a lot of things without Kennedy's knowledge, and certainly without Johnson's knowledge.
That man, Alan Dulles, is a monster and a demon, and like one of the worst. I mean, David Atlee Phillips, frankly, James Jesus Anglin, these people were psychos, total psychos. I mean, and you think of what kind of ruthless, just bloodless, like, they're awful. I mean, reptilian almost in their view of things. And no, there's no question. And to me, I said, like, just as the FBI, as long as J. Edgar Hoover's name is on that building, it's a bogus institution.
Cruel joke.
As long as, first of all, George W. Bush's name is on, H.W. Bush's name is on the CIA building, but also as long as they continue to obfuscate and deny the agency's involvement in the assassination of President Kennedy, they're corrupt and they need to go.
Right.
If they came clean, I think they could be reformed. If they came and said, you know what? It's not us. It wasn't us. But they continue to cover it up, which makes them conspirators after the fact.
60 years later, and they're still withholding documents, and they're still covering up. Speaking of documents, I will say that I used to believe, I've been studying this case for 40 years, and I once believed that Lyndon Johnson was complicit in the conspiracy too. And I was looking for evidence to prove it. And I was living in Austin, Texas. Okay. I lived in Austin. That's Johnson country. Lived there for 25 years. And I used to go to the LBJ Presidential Library all the time to do research back in the 90s and the 2000s. And I'll tell you what, there are a lot of things that changed my mind. But to give you the simple answer, what changed my mind was when in the 90s they declassified and released all of Johnson's White House tapes.
Mhm.
And I listened to his phone call with, of course, J. Edgar Hoover from the 24th, and also from all of his phone calls. I went through those tapes with a fine-tooth comb, and what I came to realize is that Johnson knew very little about what was actually going on. He didn't like the CIA. He was no friend of the CIA. That's actually kind of a bullshit story that gets circulated in conspiracy circles, like he was tight with Alan Dulles. He certainly was not. He wasn't a fan of the agency, and they weren't a fan of him, but
assassinations make strange bedfellows.
Indeed. That's right. And one of these days, Roger Stone and I are going to hash this whole thing out.
They may have hated each other, but they knew they hated Kennedy more and they wanted him eliminated. So a lot of weird people were brought together under that. And I know that Lyndon, I, again, cannot believe that they would trust that as devious and psychopathological as Lyndon was, that they would kill the president and not have Lyndon able to be, in other words, had to be involved, because otherwise he would turn it around on them and say, I found the killers of President Kennedy, here they are, and then taken over that agency. I mean, he would have done that. That's,
I think they sent Lyndon Johnson a really loud and clear message that day in Dallas. His best friend, John Connally, was sitting in the car with Kennedy and was injured and very well
they
could have
fought
died
like
himself.
cats and dogs. He fought the biggest fight he ever had with JFK, and Jackie was witness to this, was over Connally sitting in the limousine rather than Yarborough. They wanted Yarborough sitting there. So that seems odd to me that Johnson would have like a huge fight over just where people sitting in the limousines. And you could see, I think you could see on Connally's face that one picture where they're just getting ready to pull out of the airport, and he's like grimacing almost. He's got this look on his face, like, and as he said, my God, they're going to kill us all. They are going to kill us all. That's what Connally exclaimed.
They are going to kill us all.
Yeah.
And, John Connally never agreed with the single bullet theory. No. And neither did President Johnson, by the way. Yeah. I say that President Johnson was the first conspiracy theorist on the JFK case. He didn't believe any of this crap.
I mean, as Roger said, Lyndon knew his calls were being recorded, and he knew he was talking to history.
He was recording them.
Yeah, that's right. He knew. Were they shooting at me, Edgar? I mean, come on. Lyndon Johnson had his own sister killed, for God's sake. I mean, let's get real here. He was involved. I mean, I believe Billy Solesky
Johnson, but a lot lot of them just ain't true. But
why would Billy Solesky
a lot of enemies?
Do
I don't think Billy Solesky's told the truth about much.
Or Henry Marshall, excuse me.
Yeah, the Henry Marshall case is very strange, but
I mean, is Malcolm Wallace not connected to Johnson? Did he not get a 5-year suspended sentence for first-degree murder?
Yeah. That murder happened right there at the golf course in Austin. I know all about it.
Yeah,
the Kinzer case.
Douglas Kinzer, the pitch and putt, or whatever it's called.
The pitch and putt, I believe it was called.
I think that Johnson's ruthless enough. I mean, he had every motive. I just can't believe people didn't. I mean, his own. Do you think that his Madeline, Madeline Albright,
Duncan Brown?
Yes,
his alleged mistress. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it seems to me like, why would she? I read a witness when I as an attorney, when I look at a witness, okay, is this person trying to like make up a bunch of bullshit? Or are they sort of just saying kind of matter of factly, and you kind of read them? Are they throwing in? I mean, she comes across as a credible witness to me, and I don't think anybody's denied that she was his mistress. Have they? And that was his son too. That her son was Johnson's son. They did pay paternity. I mean, there's letters from Lyndon Johnson's attorneys talking about the payments coming in.
But nothing from Lyndon himself, which I find interesting.
Lyndon was so full, he would have never gotten
an affair
that far.
For all those years, and she didn't have a single note, not a single card from Lyndon, no pictures of them together. No,
I don't think so. No, I think Lyndon was pretty well.
Uh-oh, did I lose you? Uh-oh, the CIA's messing with us, Tyler.
Lyndon was not stupid. I mean, he wasn't going to leave a trail. He was a very devious criminal and smart. No, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Johnson was a very devious and highly intelligent psychopath, and I think that he he was smart. He didn't leave any tracks behind in terms of like notes and things like that. I'm sure he was smart.
Well,
enough
I
to do that.
certainly have a lot of disagreements with President Johnson. Of course, I detest what he did in the Vietnam War, and then that's very hard to forgive. I have my issues with Johnson, but I've been doing a deep dive on the evidence, trying to prove his guilt for more than 10 years now. And, it ended up leading me to a place I didn't expect. It led me to exculpatory evidence of his innocence in the case of President Kennedy's murder. I'm not defending anything else he ever did in his life, but in that particular matter, I mean, everyone deserves a defense attorney. I guess if they're going to accuse this dead man of murdering his friend, John F. Kennedy, then someone ought to defend him. And I guess, unfortunately, that's fallen upon me.
Well, I'm never, as I've always said, it's just a matter of, to me, probabilities. I don't take, 100% position. I mean, for a while I thought, well, maybe it was Oswald alone, and but I would be very interested to see what you have. I do know,
let's
for example,
talk.
the murder of JFK would be consistent with Lyndon's political, his animus. I mean, his friend John F. Kennedy, well, maybe on a personal basis, JFK treated him nicely, but he hated the Kennedys for sure. And he knew that and he hated Bobby.
More like the other way around, to be honest with you.
That Bobby hated Kennedy or Lyndon?
Bobby hated Lyndon Johnson.
Well, I think he thought that Lyndon was what he said. He said he's an animal. He is. Lyndon Johnson was a profane, disgusting person. Having his aides in there while he takes a shit. I mean, what kind of disgusting piece of garbage would do that?
Those are the stories they tell.
Having sex with his, some of his top aides' wives or secretaries while Ladybird's walking in. I mean, the guy was a pig. He was a disgusting, amoral, degenerate psychopath. And there's no question.
That doesn't mean he's guilty of murder, does it?
I have people who sat with him who were New York City police officers who said what a disgusting pig he was. I mean, literally, he would pass gas in the limousine, and it was the most disgusting foul. And one of the Secret Service agents goes to put the window down, and Lyndon says, "You leave that window up." He's like, "You should be so privileged enough to smell my ass." I mean, this man was a disgusting monster.
Lord.
I'm sorry. Laura, you're never ever going to convince me. I've seen enough that you could present. Angels could come down and say Lyndon Johnson healed the sick girl. He's still a disgusting pig. And the fact that Richard Nixon is the villain of that era is the greatest travesty of justice, I think, of history. Who was nothing. He couldn't hold a candle to. I mean, that's why he got busted. And wasn't even really directing this stuff. He wasn't like anything as calculated, and could just trying to keep up with the Kennedys, frankly, and Johnson with their tricks and their money. I mean, let's, if we want to get real here, the Kennedys were no angels back then. I mean, they bought their way. I mean, Joe Kennedy probably sealed his son's fate in many ways. I mean, Lyndon, I'm not saying that Lyndon was the prime mover with the assassination, but he damn sure had everything to gain. And if there was a plot going on between the CIA and the mafia and the Cubans to off this guy, I'm sure he gave the green light at some point. No question.
Isn't it interesting I mean, obviously, if I was the CIA and I was looking to frame someone or set him up or make him look guilty, I would probably choose the guy who had the most to gain and point an accusatory finger at that guy. I'm just saying, you got to think like the CIA, my friend. But Lyndon Johnson may well have been a son of a bitch.
Didn't make it any.
And by many accounts,
Johnson
he was, but that doesn't make him a murderer.
It's not like he tried to. Well, it's not like he tried to hide his contempt in the fact that he wanted to be president. I mean,
what's
Johnson didn't
though?
exactly protest his innocence all that much either. I mean, it wasn't like this is. I mean, he didn't seem shocked to me at all. He took charge immediately, and immediately took over the White House.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's his job.
If he really was riding in a car and the guy was blown away in front of you like that violently, I think, I don't know. I just think Johnson was, to me, like, I look at the totality of it, I guess. There might be evidence, of course. And you got to understand, like, also, the Lyndon Johnson Library is the most probably curated in terms of like, there's not going to be anything in there whatsoever that's going to give you any bad view of Lyndon Johnson. Wasn't Robert Caro banned from the library? Maybe a Lady Bird in the Family after he dared write something that was even slightly negative
That was
about
his
Johnson?
first book. Yeah, but they made up. They let him back in, and I actually love Caro's books. There's a lot of good information.
Oh, there's good history in there. But what about the USS Liberty? What about the Liberty?
Before we get to that, I did want to tell you something about Lyndon Johnson that I think a lot of people get wrong when they talk about his ambition and how much he would, Richard Nixon once said that he wanted the presidency, but he wasn't willing to kill for it, like Lyndon was. Right. But it is true that in Lyndon's youth, he dreamed of being president, and he had this great burning ambition as a young senator to one day run for president. But all that changed when he had the heart attack in 1955 that nearly killed him. Mm-hmm. And after that, he had his friends who were trying to get him to run in 1956. He wouldn't do it. In 1960, everyone, was trying to convince him to run against Kennedy. And Lyndon just really didn't want to do it. He did a half-hearted run. He declared like 2 weeks before the Democratic convention in early July, he just wasn't into it. He really didn't want the job. And he felt that he was not healthy enough to fulfill the duties of the office of the president. And then when he finally did become president in 1963, he was quite reluctant. A lot of people don't know this. But in 1964, just before the Democratic National Convention, Lyndon wrote a resignation speech.
Oh, I know. Moyers and Valeni were shocked. I mean, they were like, "Oh my God!"
He was going to quit.
Unhinged. Well, they thought he was unhinged. Yeah.
Well, he didn't want the job. That's my point. After 1955, he didn't want the stinking job. He couldn't wait to quit this stinking job. The stinking job
mental illness
killed him. It put him in his grave. It put the man in an early grave. And I will say this, I thought it was very gracious of him in 1968 when his arch enemy, Bobby Kennedy, enters the race. And he'd been afraid since 1964 that Kennedy was going to challenge him, and that he knew Kennedy wanted the job. He didn't want the job. When Kennedy comes along and declares, I'm going to run for president in March of 68, within 2 weeks, Lyndon Johnson stepped aside and he said, son, if you want this job, you can have it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was pretty big of him, honestly.
I would say that
I think he was relieved.
Johnson got rich while he was president. He was, couldn't have stolen more. But also, do you don't believe that Speaker Sam went in and basically said, look, either put Lyndon on the ticket or, J. Edgar's going to release what we have or whatever they have.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that anyone pushed John F. Kennedy around and no one told John F. Kennedy what to do.
No, I think they made
a man with his own mind, and he didn't cave to blackmail.
Well, Evelyn Lincoln begs to disagree.
I know, but God bless Evelyn. Sometimes she didn't always tell the truth. But
oh, come on now. Why would she make that up? That's one of those bits of history that Speaker Sam Rayburn was a hardball player. Lyndon Johnson thought he was just going to waltz in and get the nomination, that Kennedy wasn't going to be a problem. And then he realized, holy shit, I'm not going to. Yeah, well, and frankly, when Bobby Kennedy was shot, he denied I understand there was a what do you call it, neurosurgeon that was prepared to fly on a military transport out to Los Angeles to immediately try to help, and Johnson denied that. Said, nope, you're not flying anybody out there. And there are accounts that basically kept calling out to California, is he dead yet? Is he dead yet? So, Johnson's a psycho. There's no two ways about it. I'm sorry. What's on the record is enough for me to think that there's no salvaging this man. I'm sorry, Laurie. I know you're taking on a tough. I normally am willing to hear everybody out, and I would love to hear what you have. But I know maybe there's something that Johnson
perhaps
could
one
be.
day I can convince.
Listen, if I just listened to Johnson's speeches in the 60s, he was he had some really soaring rhetoric and could be very convincing. But behind the scenes and all the stuff that he did, God, it's
Well, I
awful.
will say this. I know his family, knew him pretty well. I worked for the Johnson family down in Austin, full disclosure. I
Okay.
worked at a station called KLBJ, which was owned by the Johnson family. And I knew Lady Bird. Lady Bird was there every day. I knew Lucy Baines.
I feel sorry
She
for Lady
ran the
Bird. I don't
station.
think she was any kind
And,
of psycho.
you know, they're really good people, Tyler. They
Yeah,
are. The
I believe it.
Johnson,
I believe it.
they're
I
good
don't
people.
question that at all.
Yeah.
I think
Johnson
they.
himself might not have been the best of people.
I think
but,
Lady Bird was horribly abused by him. I mean, the
He
infidelities that
didn't
she
treat
put
her
him
well.
through. She was like
That's
a
right.
what do you call it? A codependent or a abuse
Mm.
survivor kind of situation.
Mm,
But I
could
think she
be.
was a fine lady. She was a very
She was.
lovely lady.
She was.
Um,
I went to her
Wow.
funeral.
Yeah.
I loved her
Well, that
very
was
much.
very interesting. I never knew that about you. That you're a Johnson.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
kind of a Johnson historian, although I'm not
yeah.
as big
Yeah.
as fan. I find him fascinating. You know, he's one of those political figures who
Oh, no
did
question.
so much, and he's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
damned interesting that I've done tons and tons of research. And I was in Austin. The presidential library's right there. I'm a history buff, so I spent a lot of time there. And
That had to be
I,
fascinating.
it was
Really
really
fascinating to
cool.
go through the original letters and to read this
I
stuff. It's
did.
just amazing. Yeah.
I did. I
Well,
got
well,
access
then
to
we'll
those
have
documents.
to get together and
We will do that
I'll get you.
offline
We'll get
sometime.
together with Phil Nelson and Ed Tatro in Dallas, and we can have a big old knockdown
Ooh.
drag out. I don't know
Yeah,
if
we
Phil's going
will.
to be there. I know
Pow,
Ed will be
pow,
there.
pow.
Yeah, Ed has got
It'll
some.
be
Well, he's
great.
got some stuff. He's you know I'm talking about Ed Tatro.
Sure do. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Ed Tatro.
Well, I would sincerely hope you come to Dallas. Please do.
I'm thinking about it. I might. I don't know. I'm thinking
You got
about
to. You got to now because my mom's going to be there.
Well,
You'll
if
get a
you're
chance
going
to.
to be there, then I
I'm
guess I'll
absolutely.
have
I'm
to.
booked. I'm down. I'm down. Yeah.
Well, it's only a 4-hour drive down the road for me, so not a big deal for me to come down there. And if I'm
You're.
not
Where are
busy, I
you
just
exactly?
might.
I didn't.
I'm in
I thought.
I'm in far north Texas, as they say. I'm in Oklahoma City now.
Oh, okay. So you're
Yeah.
not. I'm in Denver, so
Yeah.
you're not all that
Yeah,
far away. It's like
exactly. You
8
could pass
hours
through
ahead.
here and have lunch with
That's
me on your
cool.
way to Dallas.
Absolutely, yeah. Or sometimes I actually do drive across country. And
Oh yeah.
just like moving cars back and forth, or like just for
You gotta
whatever. I
bring
feel
that
like I
Lincoln
need to move
Continental to
stuff. And yeah,
Dallas.
no, I would love to. We'll get together because I do pass through Oklahoma City. Sure, that'd be
Really?
great.
Well, I tell you what, you should bring your Lincoln Continental to Dallas this year.
I have the only one I've left is a 71 right now.
Oh, do you?
Just like my
Wow.
grandfather had. I found an identical, and it's in rough shape. But if I do, I will. I'm getting ready to, I think, tow it
Boy,
out here. So we'll see.
that
might
would be
happen.
pretty cool. Man, I could talk to you all night. I knew once we opened up the JFK case that this would go another hour. But I had such a good time talking to you about it. And everything that we talked about tonight was so interesting, and we barely scratched the surface. There's so much more that I would like to get into. And so please tell me you'll come back and join us again on Strange Bedfellows.
I would love to, and I'm honored to be. Thank you for having me. It's always good. Just love this conversation. I love
Me too.
just the being able to hit any topic, and you're we're definitely kindred spirits for sure. And
We are.
regardless of your total error on Lyndon Johnson.
No, you. No, you.
Yes. Okay. We're all mortals, as JFK said in his speech.
That's right. We all breathe the same air, and
Yes. Right.
and we all share this planet. And so you're going to be in Philadelphia on Monday. We're going to be live, and I'll be getting in touch with you offline so that you could be one of our reporters on the ground from Philly. We'd love to get a report from
Absolutely.
you on Monday.
Yeah. And
That'd be
that'd
great.
be great. Yeah. And as I said, my mother went to JFK's inauguration, and as well as the inaugural ball too. I forgot to mention, and she went to his viewing in the rotunda and the funeral. Well, she wasn't. She said they could only get so close on the hill in Arlington, but she could see like De Gaulle because he was so tall with his his hat. But she's 80, and if I could get in touch with you, definitely about I don't know who to contact. I'm trying to send an email just to. They said contact us for accommodations if someone can't stand, and she's got a bad knee, and I don't want to see her having to stand in line for 2 hours and stand. She wouldn't be able to do it. So
I'm sure they can give her they should roll out the red carpet for your mom.
Yeah, I feel like that.
Very
She's a
special
grand.
thing.
I mean, she's a very great lady, and she certainly worked for
Oh,
JFK.
Bobby
in
has
60.
to meet her.
Yeah, that would
Bobby
be
would
awesome.
love to meet her, and I'm pretty sure that'll happen. There's a reception after the event. I don't know if you got the invitation.
I saw that. I saw that. To be honest, we're not. I mean, I don't have that kind of money.
Not
If I
wealthy
did,
enough to afford it.
yeah, I would believe me, I would donate, but she
reckon a
lives on a
meeting
fixed.
could be
She's
arranged.
obviously 80, and has been a single mom, raised us since 79.
Wow.
So, and I'm having. I'm an honest lawyer, so unfortunately, I don't.
That means you're not
money I
rich.
should. No, I still
Yep,
believe me.
my
I
dad was
scrape
an
by.
honest lawyer too. That's why we're
Yeah.
not rich.
Yeah, I mean, I work on cars, turn wrenches, I flip cars, I resell, buy and resell what I can when I can do it to make cash. But being Roger's attorney, unfortunately, also, I mean, he had to raise money, and he paid these guys that frankly sent him down the river, in my opinion. But at the same time, it's also tough to get regular work. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're Roger Stone's attorney. Okay, thank you. Like, we'll see.
Next.
plus, I have to get my license reinstated in Delaware after the Biden crime family, sent a SWAT team in after me for my pot.
Oh my God, dude. It's just terrible. We didn't even get to that story, but they completely ruined your life over
you can
over
imagine the
marijuana
hypocrisy
possession.
involved. Like, what the hell? They knew I was an honest attorney, and did you
That's why
read
they
the
came after
actual
you.
report? Did you see the report itself from the
Nope.
Supreme Court?
No.
You would think they were like it was a recommendation letter, not a suspension, whatever. I'll send it to you. You'll see that like they have nothing. They could say nothing bad about me other than he didn't harm anybody but himself. I'm like, I didn't harm me. You people did. Like I was using this because I was in the military. I have aches and pains to this day. Bad, my knees, everything aches at times, and it gave me relief. And also just the pressures of 80 hours a week. And it's like, who are you to tell me anyway what I put in my body? It's like, go fuck yourselves.
Damn
Sorry
right.
to say that. But
Damn right.
That cost me my law practice, my law license temporarily. My house, I lost my house. I was homeless by the end of it. And while Hunter Biden runs around doing cocaine.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's a huge difference between the drugs he's doing that destroy a man's mind and body and marijuana, which helps a man's mind and body.
He had the gall to say to my brother, Hunt Biden did, well, first.
Oh no. He was just going to tell a good story.
And I believe I've seen him, been there with him. You've snorted more coke than freaking Tony Montana. And my brother's getting his life destroyed over pot and some ecstasy that, from like the fish tour that wasn't even like, I mean, even the cop who busted me testified on my behalf to the disciplinary council, or said, this is not, you guys are going overboard. He even calls it, I don't want to ruin your career, Tyler. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? Anyway,
man,
yeah,
I'm
applying for reinstatement. To be honest, I've not wanted to go back because now it's legal in Delaware. It's adult use legal pot.
Oh, is it now?
And I said, I'm not going to, I'm going to go back and say, great, maybe give me my license back since it's not illegal. You sent these SWAT team and destroyed my life and my law practice and denied, they drove me out of the state.
I wonder if they would, because Delaware's so political and it's so controlled.
No, they will. They will. They will. It's a black eye on them because everybody, even my opponents in that state, would go to my mother to this, even in recent years, and say, I'm a Democrat. I didn't support him politically, but what they did to him was crap. He was screwed and they fucked him over. And I was surprised. There's a lot of support that people I've had indirectly, like Democrat lobbyists, like top people say, I want to help him get reinstated because he like I said, disagreed with maybe what he was saying politically, but he was honest and he was trying to work for the people. And I rarely say that because I'm not one to toot my own horn that way, but I was busting my ass. I was working for poor people. I did pro bono work. And just when I finally turned the corner and started getting like into the black and paid off debt, bam, bust the door down, SWAT raid, take all I had an antique gun collection.
Yeah, I heard they got your guns too.
They took all that too. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they made it sound
like. Did you ever
like,
get them back?
No. The prosecutor who they assigned to it, a black woman, by the way, because they didn't want to be perceived like there was favoritism amongst the white male. This is the Biden's thinking, right? They wouldn't want to hurt Bo's chances that, some guy who happened to know from Archmere doesn't get screwed over for a first time offense. So that, I basically got hosed, got indicted, accidentally indicted. They said, I'm like, you're a real piece of work because again, so this prosecutor, a young black woman, in her late 30s, around 30.
Making a name for herself.
She
making a
she
career.
insisted that I forfeit all these antique bolt action rifles that were, and even the cops as they're walking out. Let me ask you, would you, when they bust like drug dealers or whoever bust anybody, do you think the cops walk out and say, Mr. Nixon, we're so sorry we have to take these. You'll get these back. This is the cops saying this to me as they're taking them. So, no, she insisted that the forfeiture be part of it. So that was the end of that. But you know what? Here's the thing. The two people responsible for prosecuting me, in the chain of command, the immediate deputy attorney general, this woman, and Beau Biden, were both dead within 5 years. She dropped dead, 32 years old, 6 months pregnant, on her kitchen floor one Sunday night.
Whoa.
Some sort of thing. Yeah. 32 years old. And I thought, wow, there's not been a deputy attorney general who's died like that at any age, since, I don't know. I've never heard of one die. She dropped dead. And, in my heart of hearts, I hate to say it, when I stepped into that prison cell and realized I'd lost everything, I wished it on them. And I've asked God for forgiveness for that. But I said, you know what? Please strike them down. These are evil people to do this to me. I'm a good person. I've tried to help people. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm a good person. I'm an honest person, and didn't deserve that. And, I know it is what it is. I've accepted my lot in this life. I'm not ever going to be rich and like comfortable. I'm always going to have to scrap and scrape. And you know what? But I have a good life, and I've been blessed with good people. And I have a great family, as small as it is. And God has blessed me to no end. And I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. You could give me 10 Hunter Biden lives of opulence. I would never trade my life for theirs, for whatever, because I know I can live with myself, for starters. Yes. And, whatever it is, what it is. And I get to meet great people like you and make new friends, people who are of integrity and are honest and care about what this world is and what it's going to become.
I feel that. And I knew, I just knew I attract good people into my life. And I knew the first time that I saw you doing a JFK debate with Austin Peterson. I believe it was.
Yeah, Austin was
LP for Liberty. Gosh. That was a great debate. Yeah. And I was like, man, I like that guy. Got to get a hold of you. And I'm so glad that we finally made this conversation happen. One of many, I hope. And I hope it's the beginning of a beautiful friendship, as they say.
Amen. You do great work, by the way, Laurie. It shouldn't go without saying. I listened to the entire spaces you did.
You were there all night.
I was in there. I heard you. I was. I mean, I love it because it's like I don't have to say anything. I can sit and listen to all these great minds, and you do such a great job as a moderator, and you just have a level head. You were able to bring in so many different people and viewpoints and just make it all flow. And you really have a talent and a gift. I think as you just have a calmness about you that kind of stills. I mean, I was like freaking out when I couldn't get on here, and I kept hearing you talk, and you have just a very soothing way about you, and I'm sure it's appreciated, and you probably have heard this before. So,
well, it's 35 years of broadcast news experience where my job is to keep people calm when things are going crazy. So here we are. We're in World War III. It just escalated 4 notches today, and I'm like, don't panic. Everything's
the nuclear
fine.
Fallout will be only mild today. Just everybody calm down.
Everybody stay calm.
Yes.
Whatever you do. So I so enjoyed this. And man, thank you for staying late with us. This turned into a 3.5 hour marathon of a show. And we're going to do this again. And I hope to meet you. I'll see you Monday in Philly here on Maverick News. And
if you could send me your number so we're connected by phone, that would be great.
Yeah. Let's exchange phone numbers off the air. And next week on Strange Bedfellows, I hope you guys will join us. We're going to have a really amazing show. Our guests will be Jared and Elizabeth Beck, also attorneys. They're the attorneys who sued the DNC over the way they rigged the primaries and screwed Booney Sanders. It's getting late. Booney Sanders. I think I've just given him a new nickname. He's Booney Sanders now. they sued the DNC, actually. And it's the DNC fraud lawsuit. You've probably heard all about it. Basically, when the DNC said, you know what, we don't care what the voters say. We are a private company, and we select who we say is going to be the nominee. And it was a really, really interesting case. So we're going to discuss that with those 2 lawyers, Jared and Elizabeth Beck. They'll be our guests here on Strange Bedfellows next Saturday night. And I hope you'll join us at 9 p.m. Eastern. Once again, Tyler Nixon, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been a pleasure to finally meet you at last, my friend.
Likewise, Laurie. Thank you.
I feel like you are my friend now. I hope you don't mind me calling you that.
It's likewise. Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you back here next Saturday night at 9. Peace.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.